righty, folks. Welcome on into the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA. We are live once again. Welcome on in. It is Wednesday, February 12th. Can you believe it? Of 2025. Hope you got your coffee. I have my water, which is what I usually drink in the morning. Welcome on in. Oh boy, okay. This weekend is the weekend. I swear to God, I'm getting the lens, chat. I'm getting the lens. Like, what the fuck? This camera has served me well. I appreciate it. I love it. It's a lucky camera. I might even keep it for like angle number 2. You said that last week, yeah, but I didn't have my. I was getting a filing cabinet, and it didn't get in yet. So I wanted to do like a whole office reorganization thing, but I didn't have my file cabinet. But now I've been trying to think about how I want to design my studio space. You know, I gotta be honest, I'm not the big fan of the Reddit shelf. You know, I'm not really a big fan of it. I know that's what everybody else does, but I'm just not a fan of it. Reddit shelf, it's what all streamers have behind them. I'll give you an example of a Reddit shelf. Hold on. This guy's got a really big one. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Like, where do you see this guy's Reddit shelf? Okay, perfect. All right, you see how there's like a lot of little individual things, and they're, you know, gamer related and all sorts of like little stuff, like individual little, like, oh, he's got a C3PO. Oh, sorry, that's R2D2. Excuse me, R2D2 over here. He's got like a little smiley basketball. He has an airsoft gun. He's got a Switch, you know. That's what I'm talking about. A streamer shelf, a Reddit shelf, you know. I don't know if I like it. I'm still going back and forth. Chatters are asking for this emote. Okay, it's good. It's good. We like Cinemike. That's good. That made me laugh. I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. And when I don't know what I want to do, like, if I don't have an idea or an inspiration that comes to me on something, that's when I'm in the most likely to just let it slip. Is it better than news talking head bookshelves? I kind of feel like I want to synthesize the two. I don't want to go as Reddit shelfy as Hassan, but I also don't want to go like, oh, he's sitting in front of a bookshelf. You know what I mean? I feel like I want to find the medium where I can get like a few items. Get a big $300 standing amethyst. Yeah. Oh, you're talking. I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe that's a bad idea. You need the crystal protection. I really do. Maybe some plants? Leftist art with bookshelf? Yeah, that's kind of the way I was thinking. Put your entire streaming setup in a cheese cave? Oh, I love cheese. Mike, are you a crystal mommy for real? I'm more of like a Maoist in 1947 on religion, but that's not true. I'm actually much more of a like tolerant on that, because I think it's a distraction. I think the like state atheism that the Soviet Union and the Chinese Communist Party practiced was too extreme, and I think it gave a lot of like people who take consolation from their religion, like, it kind of made communism really easy to demonize. I think they went too far. That being said, I'm willing to accept I might be wrong on that. Okay, what are we talking about? I don't have a strong feeling either way on that position, to be honest. All right, what are we talking about? Okay, wow. Talk about today. Number 1, is the world turning against America? Polling is starting to emerge. Assad was right about these anti-Semite accounts being boosted on Twitter as Palestine allies. Anti-Semitism is a right-wing phenomenon. So as the right wing is more ascendant, especially on platforms like Twitter, you're going to see more anti-Semitism. It's just, it is what it is, you know? I would honestly, I agree that this guy's being boosted because he's a right-wing anti-Semite. But on the other hand, I wouldn't even say the word Palestine near this guy. Like, like this guy, just don't even associate him with our movement. Like, when you do this thing where you're constantly like, these people aren't part of our movement, these people aren't part of your movement, and that's the number one thing you do, you are allowing the association to take root. Guy's a scumbag anti-Semite. I don't need to say anything more. Oh, okay. So is the world turning against America? The answer to that, I do something a little bit different when I stream. When I ask questions, the answer is almost always yes. When when journalists ask questions, the answer is almost always no in a headline. So the answer is yes, and that's awesome. The wine moms are furious. I repeat, the wine moms are furious. In fact, I should change my title to Wine Moms Furious from people. The wine moms are furious at Democrat inaction. The wine moms are absolutely furious. Now, if you don't know what a wine mom is, who here doesn't know what a wine mom is? Who doesn't know what I mean by that? Raise your hand if you're like, I don't know what you mean. Caught! You're all caught. You're all caught for not being organizers. You're all caught for not being activists. You're all fucking caught. If you don't know what a wine mom is, then you're fucking caught. Because whenever you have an organization that's doing shit in the real world, wine moms appear. Wine moms are the people who are the linchpin of organizing. They're the volunteer who's doing the grunt work for the organization. They're bringing in snacks. They are holding it together. The wine mom is how you know an organization is going somewhere. When you have middle-aged women working hard and tirelessly for an organization, you know that organization is going places. The wine mom is like, if I go into a group and I don't see any middle-aged women, I'm like, oh, this group's fucking toast. If I walk in and I see a bunch of middle-aged women, I'm like, oh, fuck. This thing is going places. Or you know, recently retired, middle-aged to recently retired women. That is the backbone of any real organization. All right, they take care of the things that the egomaniac men won't do, because men suck. The mom block anarchists that show up to fight Proud Boys. I will say this. Wine moms aren't appropriate for every role in an organization, just like elderly people or children aren't. But when you see a movement has its phalanx of wine moms, you know it's going place. And so the organization of the wine mom in the Democratic Party is a group called Indivisible. Indivisible is the honest-to-God grassroots backbone of the Democratic Party. And the Democrats are getting absolutely blasted by the wine moms. The wine moms are calling them and going, why the fuck are you not standing up to Trump, you pieces of shit? You told us it was going to be fascism if Donald Trump won again, and you're not fighting back. What the fuck? And the Democrats are losing their shit. They're getting mad at the wine moms. We're going to deep dive into that. I actually think we may need to start a new party. I was just thinking, gosh, oh my God, I just had an idea. It just popped into my head. AMLO and Claudia Sheinbaum are like Bernie Sanders and AOC that don't suck. It's like AMLO was like, okay, the center-left party sucks and it's corrupt and it'll never help Mexican people and I'm tired of this bullshit. I'm starting my own party. And Claudia Sheinbaum is somebody who started, like, AOC started in New York City. Claudia Sheinbaum started in Mexico City and climbed her way up. It's crazy how much AMLO and Claudia Sheinbaum are so much better than AOC and Bernie Sanders. It's not even funny. I like Bernie Sanders. I kind of like AOC. She's officially like falling off for me. It's hard for me to really say you're falling off, but AOC is falling off. I reposted a vid about a dude calling out the devs as being pussies for not fighting the Department of Ed stooge, and I had a few wine moms repost my post. You know it's over if they're about that smoke. Yeah, of course. If anyone doesn't understand why moms, they need to learn about the history of MAD. Oh, I mean, MAD is not a group that I particularly consider to be something to emulate, but homicides are decreasing in Mexico for the month of January. Sheinbaum's strategy is proving effective. I hope they can, homicide in Mexico is largely due to the fact that the United States supports massive cartels. What else are we going to talk about today? Oh, the Musk and Trump. Okay, can we just start off the stream with this? The Elon Musk Trump Oval Office press conference. Like, legitimately, what I'm curious about is what's going to happen when Donald Trump's popularity falls. I don't know if you guys saw, but inflation was ticking up again. Ticked up to 0.5% in January, back up to 3% annually. Claudia has recently been going hard about the cartels in Mexico have weapons specifically used by the U.S. military. Why is that? Who is selling them? I love her. Yeah, she's great. I adore Claudia. I literally do. I don't simp for people much, but she's simp worthy in the sense of like, yeah, we gotta defend Claudia. And then finally, just conservatives will believe anything. Like conservatives will believe anything you tell them. It's crazy. All right, so let's watch this shit and just start malding because I feel like this is the best way to get going. I'm able to get dual citizenship for Mexico. Should I do it? My feeling is that it is wise to have an escape plan. I saw someone refer to this admin as the Booger Reich. I think Hassan's Burger Reich is a good plan.
Yeah, at a high level, if you say what is the goal of Doge and I think a significant part of this of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well,
Donald Trump hates children. Can we just pause for a second? Donald Trump hates children. Like this child starts babbling and Donald Trump doesn't even pretend to be like, oh, that's cute. He's just like, shut up, kid. He really is Satan incarnate, dude.
If you don't have a feedback loop, FKX, we would have to, if you sorry. So, tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the
how the fuck are we? How the fuck do we have this nerd fucking loser as the richest man in the world? Like no system that produces Elon Musk as the richest man in the world is a sentient system. It has no. Tesla is falling off. How is he rich? How is he this fucking rich? It's crazy.
Government. And if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large, unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And then we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking because we spend a lot of money on defense. But if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about 30 million,
right,
etc.?
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few.
Okay, I want to pause it for a second and say something surprising, which is the American government is a scam, and it's totally ineffective, and it is full of graft, and it is just idiotic and wasteful, and it's not because government can't work. It's because the way the Democrats and Republicans have designed the systems is to make them as ineffective as possible. Like there's no doubt about that. that America's system of government at the state, local, and federal level is trash. Just look at California. California, they have hundreds of billions of dollars and they accomplish nothing with it. I mean, that's just true.
People in the bureaucracy who
This is why you don't have like a 3 or 4 year old at the White House. They should be like socializing with other children and like learning social skills. And like I find the way that Elon Musk uses his children as like props to be fucking weird.
have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, you know, what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But just there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, you know, we're looking at, say, well, we just if you look at say Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment. And that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation, can take up to a year to get on the list, and even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here, we're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that.
Oh, I forgot to inform you of this, and I can't find anything other than Jamie Peck's Instagram post, but Luigi accepted the $300,000 they raised for his defense. Elon Musk, like, if you want to know the secret to getting rich, if you really want to become rich, the answer is government contracts. That is the #1 way to get rich in this country. If you see a business and they're like, we just been accepted for a cutting edge deal with the Defense Department, that company is going to explode. Like every time. The most rich people you know got rich because of some sort of government contract or license or cutout. We're talking about privatized utilities. We're talking about things like liquor licenses or beer distributorships or car dealerships or boat dealerships. Things like that are how most people get rich. They do not get rich by like starting a successful chain of restaurants. That's like fucking impossible. Okay? Like you could have that's fucking impossible. All right? You get rich by like selling the Pentagon screws that you mark up by 500%. You get rich by finding old surplus ammunition and selling it to the Iraqi army through the DOD at 5,000% markup. You get rich by having some sort of cutout, subsidy, special depreciation law. That's why people get rich in real estate the most. Real estate is the place where you can get wealthy through government support as well. That's why I brought up things like TIFs, or another example of how you get rich in real estate is a zoning variance. Like if I buy 10 acres of land from you and it is low density agricultural land, and then I turn that into high density residential without doing anything, I just massively increased the value of the land. And all that happened was a government regulatory change. So many people get rich. They go to farmers, they buy up agricultural land, and then they go to the planning department, and then they get it changed to low density residential, and then they subdivide 500 plots on it, and they build houses, on those plots and they sell them. And the reason why they make big money is not because necessarily the houses are turning a ton of profit, although the houses do turn profit. It's because the land, per quarter acre went from, $5,000 a quarter acre to $100,000 a quarter acre. That's how they get rich. And so like that's the real rich people in your community, right? It is not people that are like innovating things. It is people that know how to work the levers of government in order to give themselves special permission that only they can get. So you're saying I need to buy the empty lots close to my house and build mansions on them. I mean, are they? Can you subdivide the land? Are they zoned properly? Do you have the ability to get variances on the traffic? Are you going to get tax incentives? It doesn't pencil out until you could do all those things. 100% acres of farmland near me in Florida went from cattle and blueberries to townhomes, all at a $400K a pop. Yep.
Really, everything is geared towards complaint minimization. So then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain, obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints. But now we're saying that, no, actually, we are going to complain. If money is spent badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay. Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people. I mean, these things, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical, I think. It's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved.
Funny, watching The Wire with the wife, 4th season, when it's all politics. Last episode had a donor come to a candidate saying, I need that traffic easement or something for the project to be worth it. And here's what we're talking about it now. I mean, of course, that's because I've actually done stuff in local government, man. One of the moments in my career that literally does stick in my craw is the fact that people don't know anything and then they talk about politics for a living and they get followings and they don't know shit. And like, I'm nice to a lot of people that I would never watch in a million years just because they don't know shit. And like, I don't know how to like square that circle. Am I being a hypocrite? Am I being an asshole? It's not that they're wrong about things necessarily. It's just they bring nothing to the table, and it's just like, what's the best way to deal with that? I guess just ignore them. But like, at the end of the day, it's just very frustrating in this space because clout is its own thing, right? Like, if you have a lot of followers, then people will listen to you because you have a lot of followers. But I feel like if you have a lot of followers, you should do some homework. You should like study a little bit, maybe read a little bit. But what ends up happening is people get a lot of followers and then they get arrogant because they have a lot of followers. And they're like, well, then I must be smart. That's me. I bring nothing but my good looks. No, I think you're entertaining, Frost Prime, and I like you. And I think you have good takes. I'm talking about people that I think we all know who I mean. Let's just say short stack goblin. Asmold is a prime example. I mean, Asmongold has a flaw that we all have. I'm going to try to explain the flaw. Maybe it has a name. I don't know. But this is the flaw that we have. So many of us don't really consider who we really are. But we think of ourselves as what we imagine we could be. Does that make sense? Like, we don't really reckon with our self-awareness. We live in this fantasy of progression and improvement, and we think about ourselves as that imagined future that we are progressing toward. And when we have flaws, we think, oh, I'm working on that flaw. That's not who I am. I recognize that as a flaw. I could change it if I wanted to. It's just a lower priority thing right now. We all do that. But for Asmongold, that's his entire life. I don't think Asmongold really sits there and go, wow, I'm surrounded by a rotten room full of trash and vermin. I haven't taken a shower in a month. I'm disgusting. Like, he doesn't think like that. He thinks, oh, I'm doing this for the bit. I could change any time. I could clean this up out whatever I want to. I could, this is what makes me popular. Right? He doesn't really reckon with the fact that he doesn't have an education. His personal life is in shambles. His health is failing. The conditions around him are uninhabitable and pestilent. He exists in this kind of like bubble of his own hubris and arrogance. And the people around him, because this is the people he wants around him, are parasitic and transactional. Because he has such profound self-loathing, he can't experience love. To love others, you must be able to love yourself. You have to see yourself as worthy of love in order to really love another. He can't. He sees himself as worthless and disgusting, and the only thing that he brings value to the table is his audience. So he seeks out people that are openly transactional with him because he feels secure in that transactional relationship. He doesn't feel like he could be blindsided. And so the people he brings around them are sociopathic, social climbing, evil people who want to turn him into a lolcow for money. And it's just like, I don't know how to get him out of that trap. So of course he's going down right-wing politics. When you live a life without love, where you hate yourself, of course you become a conservative. Of course you become somebody who believes in dog-eat-dog world. So of course you believe in hierarchical power and transactional things and the fallen nature of man and all the things that conservatives believe. I said this before, but the foundational belief of conservatism is that there's only so much good to go around, so you need to hoard it for yourself and your people that you love, right? Like if we tried to go out there and help everybody on this planet, conservatives believe it would make everything worse, actually, because we would take the good that exists in the world and we'd spread it too thin. That's what they believe. This is a foundational belief of every conservative, that by trying to do good, you will do ill. They all think that. They all believe it fundamentally, and they're all connected to it. Bro, this is not how you build yourself an audience. You're probably like 13 or something, but if you want some real advice on streaming, sometimes people come in here who are very small creators, and they're like, how do you have thousands of viewers? How do I build a community? And so I want to help you. If you want to become a content creator, why? That's the question you need to answer. And it has to be a good answer. If your answer is like, I just want to be famous, then you're never going to succeed. You need to have a reason. You need to have a motivation. You need to have something that makes you unique and valuable. Don't just look at other people creating and going, I could do that. That will never work. Anyway, that's the kind of fundamental belief of conservatives, right? Like, there's always so much good to go around.
If it's not, we should think about it. So, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone that's 150? I don't. Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. That's a case where, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two. And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately. I'll tell you another crazy thing. So, one of the things is we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this obviously there need to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, let's. By
the way, chat, what's really interesting is the federal bureaucracy has been shrinking. The federal employment has been shrinking. As the population increases, the federal government's employ has been shrinking. It's one of the major problems for why we can't get anything done is because we do too much stuff with privatization and contractors. This is legitimately sad. And the reason why this is true is because you're hanging out with Destiny and Aiden Ross, and you're hanging out with evil people. That's sad. I've got a bunch of friends in the streaming industry. That feels bad for you. Casey Tron says, another case of I was right. I know, it's our burden, Casey Tron. Oh yeah, you want to see, speaking of Mike was right.
We got to stop that war. And I'm interested primarily.
Did I skip ahead by accident?
Their student debt, the monthly payments drop. they are paid. People to do to shift from that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. So, you know, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not. We're you know, what I mentioned, for example.
How far were we? Chat. Someone look at the VOD while I pull up something else. I accidentally clicked. All right, here's what I want to show you. G Hire says, "Is there any political party in the world that hates its own voters more than the Democrats do?" And there's something that I wrote last February where I said, when I first started in organizing, my mentor had a saying that they told me would help explain politics for me for the rest of my life. I think it holds up well. It is, Republicans fear their base, Democrats hate their base. And it's always right. It is always right. And here we are a year later, and this post is like, the Democrats despise their grassroots groups. Can't spell felon without Elon. Very true. The thing about Elon Musk is that he exploited Reddit liberalism to become a multi-billionaire. None of those words are in the Bible. 6 minutes and 10 seconds, you king.
It's proved. If it's not, we should think about it. So, you know, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone who's 150? I don't. Okay.
That's made up. That's not true. Of course it's a lie.
In today's episode of proof that Elon doesn't know anything at all about software engineering, and that neither do his minions, who are professional software engineers, he claimed in an interview with the press that there are people who are 150 years old that are getting Social Security. So what is the event that happened 150 years ago? It's the meter convention, when the standards, the international standards for different measures were established. Why is that important? If you've ever used Unix systems or written software for them, you will probably know that if you have a date, it is the number of seconds since the Unix epoch. That's the date. And it comes out to, it's this very long number that you can convert to a date that a person can read. So in Unix, if you have a date stored as 0, you will get January 1st, 1970. You'll often see that date in places in apps and software and websites where there's no date. They don't know the date. This is what it will show, because they will just have a 0 for the date, and it converts it to this date, because that's when Unix epoch started. There is another epoch called ISO 8601, and the ISO 8601 epoch is the meter convention 150 years ago. Now, this is the international standard for how to store dates. Social Security uses a language called COBOL, which is a very old language. And COBOL does not have a date type. It doesn't have a time type. It doesn't have any kind of date time type like most languages, most modern languages do. And so you have to store dates as numbers. And one of the formats for dates that is really easy to store as a number is ISO 8601, which stores it in like 4 digits for the year, 2 digits for the month, 2 digits for the date, etc. And you can store any date as a number that way. And this is the international standard way of storing dates. And so that's what people will oftentimes use for systems that are written in languages like COBOL that don't have native date types. And so if you implement a system that way, which is very common for those kinds of systems, and you don't know the date for something, and you have a 0 date, it's going to say 1875. Not because the answer to whatever date you're looking for is 1875, but because there is no value stored. So if they don't know someone's birth date, they don't know the date that something happened, this is what the answer will be. It'll say 1875.
Elon Musk doesn't program. Okay? He hasn't programmed since PayPal. And according to what people say at the time, his code was so terrible that they just ripped it all out. Like, PayPal didn't use any of his code.
They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records.
Mike, didn't you call this? Inside tension, Democrats growing tension with their grassroots. Yeah, we're going to talk about this next.
Records. They're missing out. So
God, every time
Elon that's the case
talks,
where like
it's so boring. He's so uncharismatic. It's crazy.
I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous. One of the two. And then there are a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, like, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately. Also, another crazy thing. So, you know, one of the things is like we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this. Obviously, there need to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, well, okay, well, let's, if people can retire, you know, with full benefits and everything, that would be good. They can retire, get their retirement payments, everything. And then we were told, this is actually, I think, a great anecdote, because we were told that the most number of people that could retire possibly in a month is 10,000. We're like, well, why is that? Well, because all the retirement paperwork is manual on paper. It's manually calculated, then written down on a piece of paper. Then it goes down a mine. And I'm like, what do you mean a mine? Like, yeah, there's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine. We'll post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine shaft elevator can move determines how many people can retire from the federal government. And the elevator breaks down and then, sometimes, and then nobody can retire. Doesn't that sound crazy? There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we can take those people and say, like, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft and carrying manila envelopes to, you know, boxes in a mine shaft, you could do practically anything else. And you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way. So anyway, so I think, you know, that's an example. Like at a high level, if you say, like, how do we increase prosperity? Is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles. And so increase the total output of goods and services, which means that there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal.
Okay. So, So we're gonna measure standard of living of who? That's a great way of looking at a society. I couldn't agree more. Rawlsians in, yeah. I think that we should measure the worth of a society based on the standard of living of the worst off person. Now, in America, the worst off person is dying on the street right now of multiple untreated diseases, and so that's probably not a good society, right? So it's a philosophy called maximin. Okay, chat. If you want some cheap, easy social democrat or democratic socialist philosophizing, there's something called maximin. What's that mean? It means societies ought to maximize the position of the worst off person. Now, if you're like, well, that means you just give $1 billion to every homeless. No, because as soon as they get $1 billion, they're not the worst off person. There's a new worst off person. So just try to give $1 billion to the worst off person will only last for a few people before you run out of money. And there's going to be a bunch of really bad people in really bad positions. Okay. So what does that mean? So I think it's a worthy goal to measure a society based off of the standard of living of the median person, the average person, the bottom 10% person. And I can tell you right now, America sucks. I'm really bored of Elon. Does Trump ever talk? Okay, we're almost at Trump. Jesus Christ.
Everyone's very quiet.
So how do you feel about eliminating the penny? Good, eliminate the penny. As long as all existing pennies are still good money, I don't care. Pennies are fucking worthless. I remember in 1995 or 6, I was collecting pennies because I was trying to buy Wheel of Time books as in 6th grade. I was like scrounging pennies, and it was fucking worthless. I was born that year, fucking old head, haha. Yeah, of course. It was still, pennies were still worthless then. People wouldn't bend over to pick up a penny in 1995. I think I was trying to buy, it was 1995, so I was like trying to buy, I think I was trying to buy Lord of Chaos paperback. Why even have anything lower than a dime as coinage? I mean, nickels are probably needed. Nickels are even more unprofitable. Eliminate them both. I would make the nickel cheaper. We'll have a cheaper material.
People normally this quiet?
Your detractors, Mr. Musk.
What?
Including a lot of Democrats,
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that.
Ugh, the mental fragility of the most powerful people on the planet is embarrassing to watch. It is absolutely embarrassing to watch the mental fragility of these fucking children, dude. And if you're like, Mike, he's laughing and joking, then you don't know how to see. That's your autism coming out, chatter. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to tell you it is, because he's shuffling around. He's nervously, you know, he's taking his head off. He's like rubbing his sweat off his brow. He's like, he's nervous. he's hurting. He's stressed. He ain't trolling shit. He's trolled.
You're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted, we have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what the people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are in effect policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the Doge organization.
Except when you talk about who works for them, in which case you say it's a crime to say who the 19-year-olds saying racial slurs on their social media. That's a crime to talk about those racial slur kids. So I love maximum transparency where the people doing the thing are immediately stopped. Oh, we have a hype train going on, chat. Top sub gifter, top bits odor. Wait, there's a level 111 emote? Yo, Twitch, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, come on, man. A level 111, get the fuck out of there.
So, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not, what I mentioned, for example, about Treasury, just making sure that payments that go out, taxpayer money that goes out, is categorized correctly, that the payment is explained, that organizations on the do not pay list, which takes a lot to get there, that actually are not paid, which currently they are paid. These are not individual judgment decisions. These are about simply having sensible checks and balances in the system itself to ensure that taxpayer money is spent well. So it's got nothing to do with, like, say, a contract with some company of mine at all.
But if there is a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president, I know, has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like, wait a second, hey, that seems like maybe that's, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately,
Including you yourself.
Yes. But transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on. And then you can see, am I doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that segment or look in that area if we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest. And we watched that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this. Now, one thing also that Elon hasn't really mentioned are the groups of people that are getting some of these payments. They're ridiculous. And we're talking about billions of dollars that we've already found. We found fraud and abuse I would say those two words as opposed to the third word that I usually use, but in this case, fraud and abuse. It's abusive because most of these things are virtually made up, or certainly money shouldn't be sent to them. And you know what I'm talking about. It's crazy. So, but we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that we've already found. And now a judge who's an activist judge wants to try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said government is corrupt. And it is very corrupt. It's very, very...
And I'm going to show you how corrupt by giving myself a lot of money. I'm not rich like Elon. My family got rich off of owning slums where the rent was paid by the government. Oh, whoops. Did Mike just say that every rich person is really rich because of government contracts? Who knew?
Very, it's also foolish. As an example, a man has a contract for 3 months and the contract ends, but they keep paying him for the next 20 years, because nobody ends a contract. You got a lot of that. You have a contract that's a 3-month contract. Now, normally, if you're in a small, in all fairness, it's the size of this thing is so big.
Yeah.
But if you have a contract and you're in a regular business, you end the contract in 3 months. It's a consultant. Here's a contract for 3 months, but it goes on for 20 years. And the guy doesn't say that he got money for 20 years, They don't say it. They just keep getting checks month after month. And you have various things like that, and even much worse than that, actually, much worse. And I guess you call that incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be corruption. It could be deals made on both sides, where the guy gets the money, he kicks. I think there's a lot of kickback here. I see a lot of kickback here.
There's a lot of kickbacks.
A tremendous kickback, because nobody could be so stupid to give out some of these contracts. So he has to get a kickback. So that's what I got elected for, that and borders and military and a lot of things, but this is a big part of it. And I hope that the court system is going to allow us to do what we have to do. We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of dollars. And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find. That will have quite an impact on the budget. And you'll go to a judge where they handpick a judge, and he has certain leanings. I'm not knocking anybody for that, but he has certain leanings. And he wants us to stop looking. How do you stop looking? I mean, we've already found it. We have a case in New York where a hotel has paid $59 million, $59 million because it's housing migrants, illegal migrants, all illegal, I believe.
And they were being paid twice the normal room rate at 100% occupancy.
Unbelievable.
So it's a racket.
Yeah.
Mr. Musk, I'm going to ask you a question. You
Well,
said
if I may sort of just going for the president's comments, at a
By the way, I mean, like, even if that's true, which it almost certainly is, it is graft. There's no doubt about that. And the thing is, people will, and even if it's not true, even if they're lying, the reality is, why doesn't the government have public housing? Why don't we have a whole a backlog of high quality available public housing for people to live in? Why is there no social public housing available in this country? Why do we have a 6 million housing unit shortage in the United States? That's probably even more acute than that if people could actually move to where they want to move. Like, the reason why America sucks now is it's unaffordable to get a house. The only place where it's not unaffordable is where there was a boom 50, 70, or 100 years ago, and there's a bunch of old housing that's sitting there vacant because there was an economic depression in that area and people left. Like, that's the only place where it's affordable to live. But if you're talking about, like, the places where economic growth is primarily happening, you can't get a house.
high level, you say, well, what? How?
I mean, he's a complete fucking moron. Like, everything they say is such bullshit. It's actually shocking how they never bring up real shit. There's a lot of graft in our environment, but they support that. They support it. It's like, it's fucking crazy, man.
How do you, what are the two ingredients that are really
Whether I make 20x the minimum wage, I'm not even close to being able to afford a house where I want to live. Yeah.
necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to
babies
$1
froze
trillion.
to death?
And it's really two
Jesus
things.
Christ.
Competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there.
This guy would be inappropriate in the 60s, dude. You're in the fucking Oval Office! Be normal!
So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with the support of the president, we can cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1, and then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the builders of America to build, and if we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3-4%, maybe 5%, and that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion. Between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no inflation in 26. And if the government is not borrowing as much, it means that...
Wait, so we're aiming for 0% inflation now? Oh! Oh, boy! Oh, boy! They're trying to crash the economy. Are they actually trying to crash the economy? So fucking like I don't even know if they are at this point.
Costs decline. So everyone's the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American. I mean, imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same, and their mortgage, all their debt payments dropped. How great is that for the average American?
We had
That's
no
what we're
idea. We had no idea we were going to find this much, and it's open. It's not like complicated. It's
It's not that
simple
complicated.
stuff. It's
Just
like
a lot of work.
We
Yeah.
can't believe it. A lot of work. A lot of smart people involved. Very, very smart people. But you're talking about anywhere maybe $500 billion. It's crazy the kind of numbers you're
is really
talking
crazy.
about. You know, normally when you're looking at something, you'll find you're looking for 1 out of 100. You're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good.
Yeah.
And you can look at the title and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And the public gets it. You know, the public gets it. You've seen the polls. The public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on.
Mr. Musk, President Trump, Senator.
Yeah.
Mike, if Canada wants to buy PA and it was on the ballot, would you vote yes to join Canada? My feeling about that is that Canada is the one place in the world that may be worse run than the United States. Like the only reason Canada is in any way like better than the United States is single payer healthcare that you guys are actively trying to dismantle. The UK is another, I mean the whole Anglosphere is collapsing, but Canada sucks too. Like you're about to elect a conservative named Pierre, for fuck's sake. What the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, come on.
Go ahead. Wait, go ahead.
Senator Rand Paul today said that Doge cuts will ultimately need Congress. Do you agree with that? Is that the
I
plan?
really don't know. I know this. We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse. If I need a vote of Congress to find fraud and abuse, it's fine with me. I think we'll get the vote, although there'll be some people that wouldn't vote. And how could a judge want to hold us back from finding all of this fraud and finding all of this incompetence? Why would that happen? Why would even Congress want to do that? Now, Congress, if we do need a vote, I think we'd get a very easy vote because we have a track record now. We've already found billions of dollars of abuse, incompetence, and corruption. A lot of corruption.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
Well, I
with that
always
order?
abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum. And it gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. You know, if a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, yeah, the answer is I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. But appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to the taxpayer.
Yeah, if I can add to that, what we're finding is that a bunch of the fraud is not even going to Americans. So I think we can all agree that if there's going to be fraud, it should at least go to Americans. But a bunch of the fraud rings that are operating in the United States and taking advantage of the federal government, especially in the entitlements programs, are actually foreign fraud rings. They're operating in other countries and actually exporting money to other countries. We should stop that.
Mr. Musk,
And this is big numbers. We're talking about $100 to $200 billion a year.
Sure.
Serious money.
Mr. Musk, you said on X
Yeah.
that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact-check this, apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas, actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly. I'm not sure that's something Americans would be.
He said sex. Sex. Whoa, he said sex. 50 million is a lot of money, man. Like, this is the level of stupidity of the conservative movement. Like, it's one of those things where it's not only contemptuous, it's kind of like insanely stupid. Like, do I even need to explain why it's stupid? Do I even need to explain it? Why it's infantile? Do I even need to explain why you're a fucking moron? And this is why China will win. Like, legitimately, this is why China will win. The communist-led state capitalism, they are not dumb like this. They're just not. If the Chinese state calculates we will be able to help the development of Mozambique and increase our parties and our country's positive social connection to Mozambique, we will provide this assistance and condoms to help lower HIV transmission rates, and they'll just do it as from a logical. They'll make a report about this is how we can help Mozambique to increase our, and they'll fucking do it. They won't go like, no, condoms. It's fucking over. There's no shot. We're not even going to be a challenge to China. Like, we're not. The only way the United States of America could challenge China is a thermonuclear strategic all-out strike. We can't win. Our political class is too stupid. Our foreign policy apparatus is too ineffective and racist and hubristic. We have the worst governmental class on the planet. The corruption and stupidity is unbelievable. The media we have are just, it's vacuous bullshit. They're too stupid to hold ideas in their heads. What do these fuckers do all day? It's unbelievable. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's the sooner this empire falls, the better. At this point, like, what could you even say? Oh, wow, you gave $50 million of condoms. Now, I'm sure if you look into it, it's not $50 million of condoms. It's $50 million to set up a, anti-HIV prevention program in Mozambique to save millions of lives. But it gets shortened to $50 million of condoms because that's funny. Major media jobs are pure nepotism and come from upper ruling class to begin with. They have no stake in challenging the status quo. You're 100% correct. That's why they hate me. That's why they hate Hassan. Because, like, those of us who built up by finding an audience and, like, having speaking about things in a coherent way and building our audience up through the efficacy of our predictions and our analysis and our understanding and our entertainment value and all those other fucking things, they hate us. I mean, it's shocking. Like, legitimately, what we have built on Twitch, the viewership we get, compares to projects that literally get hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. I'm a guy with a $50 webcam.
Really excited about. And that is really an enormous number of condoms, if you think about it. But if it went to Mozambique instead of Gaza, I'm like, okay, that's not as bad, but still, why are we doing that?
Mr. Musk, can you talk a little bit about how closely you're working with agency heads as you're directing these cuts? Do they have the how much input do agency heads have when you're making these decisions?
Yeah, we work closely with the agency heads, yeah. There are sort of checks in place. So it's not just us just going in and doing things willy-nilly. It's in partnership with the agency heads, and I check frequently with the president to make sure that this is what the president wants to have happen. So we talk almost every day, and I double check things to make sure, is this something, Mr. President, you want us to do this? Then we'll do it.
USAID has been one of your main targets. Are you concerned at all that some of the cuts or that shutting that agency altogether may lead to diseases?
Total Trumpism victory. Total Trumpian victory. Total Russian victory, honestly. She looks like a comic book villain. She just looks like a comic book villain. Incredible. I'm trying to find the Senate broadcast. They just didn't have it. They didn't broadcast the vote. The Senate has voted 52-48 to confirm Tulsi Gabbard as the what do they even try for Dems are such I mean, they voted against her as a block. So what more can you say? That's crazy. You can't filibuster nominees anymore. They overturned the filibuster for nominees.
Or other bigger problems starting in other countries that then come to the United States.
That happened a while ago.
Yeah, so that's an interesting example. So that's something where we work closely with the State Department and Secretary Rubio. And we have, for example, turned on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention.
Left that, you said?
Yes, correct. And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly. So,
do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
I think that there are some worthy things, but overall, if you say what is the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
I mean, just as a follow-up to the Pentagon contracts, if you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense, is that
which we
a
definitely need
conflict
to
of
do and
interest?
are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX or someone who will be putting for the contract. And I'd like to say, if you see any contract where where it was awarded to SpaceX and it wasn't by far the best value for money for the taxpayer, let me know, because every one of them was.
The president said the other.
The Starship is like blatantly behind schedule, like significantly behind what you bid, the bidding schedule for like the performance of isn't it like 2 years behind at least? My God, my camera is exploding again. Why is the kid on his head during a press briefing? Because he's an inappropriate weirdo.
Day that you might look at treasuries. Could you explain that a little bit? What kind of fraud, and that question goes to both of you, what kind of fraud are you expecting to see or do you see right now in U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, I think you mean the Treasury Department as opposed to Treasury bills, or...
You also referenced treasuries on Air Force One the other night.
Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, really, the first order of business is to make sure...
Starship would be on Mars by 2022. Can you give me a clip of that?
Sure, we're actually collecting. Sorry for this. I thought my son might enjoy this, but he's sticking his fingers in my ears and stuff.
It's the final struggle, chat. It's the final struggle. It's the final struggle. Like, that's all that's repeating in my head. This is the final struggle.
It's a bit hard to hear sometimes. Hey, stop that.
This is all I'm hearing as he talks.
全世界无产者联合起来！全世界无产者联合起来！新青年把我中华文化觉醒之火趁势烧起来。
我们穿的衣，我们住的房，哪样不是劳动者所创造的呢？同学们，历史的重要时刻就要到。
无论是谁，要是敢亡我国家、灭我种族，我们就跟他们决战到底！起来，饥寒交迫的奴隶，起来，全世界受苦的人。
I'm doing this for my own mental health, not you.
根据民主原则，我们将选举产生，
中国共产党中央局成员。
It's like 12 guys in a room, man. They did it.
旧世界，大河落花流，水奴隶们起来起来！不要说我们一无所有，我们要做天下的主人。
武装斗争，
这是最后的斗争，团结起来！
March, they lost and they had to march all the way across China.
这是最后的斗争，团结起来，到明天，赢得那熊孩儿，就一定要实现。
The beginning of the video starts with proletariat of the world unite and all that we own. Isn't it all produced by us workers? Yes.
中央人民政府今天胜利了。
The thing about Musk and Trump is they're dismantling the only people that are even have a chance of containing China. You'll love to see it, honestly. Keep it up.
那么救世主也不靠神仙皇帝，要创造人类的幸福，全靠我们自己。我们要夺回劳动果实，让思想冲破牢笼，快把那炉火烧得通红，真人我们的目的。
一定要达到，我们的目的一定能够达到。
团结起来，到明天，赢得那熊孩儿，就一定要实现。这是最后的斗争，团结起来，到明天，赢得。
Awarded to the city of Beijing.
So agrees.
这是载入中华民族史册的一天。
实现中华民族的伟大复兴，就是中华民族近代最伟大的作为。
经过长期努力，中国特色社会主义进入了新时代。
这是最后的斗争，团结起来，到明天，赢得那熊孩儿，就一定要实现。赢得那熊孩儿，就一定要实现。
伟大光荣正确的中国共产党万岁！伟大光荣英雄的中国人民万岁！
It's funny because you go back to the very beginning of the video. This was China before the Communist Party. And this is China 100 years later.
共产党万岁！伟大光荣英雄的中国人民万岁！
That's all you can say.
So, no, the stuff we're doing.
To what extent do you credit capitalism for China's development? I would say exactly what China would say, which is development of China using markets and private enterprise is completely consistent with the understanding of how human beings have developed over the course of history. Feudalism gave way to capitalism. That was a progressive force. Using capitalism to build up those what they call the productive forces of society is the way that human beings have developed in the past. And it doesn't make sense to just be like, oh, well, it's not fair for you to use what we know works. And the thing about China is they haven't allowed capitalists to completely dominate their society and control everything of politics. Like in America, we have the richest man in the world in the White House dictating to us what's going to happen. This is not how it works in China. You can literally see capitalists just destroying things thoughtlessly for their own gain. You think the fact that there was an electoral college vote and 30% of the population picked Trump, that means that this system is somehow better? China has a lot of billionaires. It's true, they do. And they've been, and they're constantly put in their place. The tech bros, Xi put them in their place. The real estate speculators, they've been put in their place. Consistently put in their place. Now, is there still corruption within China? Absolutely. Is China doing oppressive shit that I disagree with? Absolutely. Are they too repressive and too concerned about outside meddling? Yes. Would I like to see more progress in the social arena? Going from a kind of don't ask, don't tell tolerance of LGBTQ people to more openly embracing it. But like if you compare how queer people are treated in China with how queer people are treated in American, puppets in Africa, it's night and day. So, I think China is definitely not the most progressive place in the world yet. But when you see how the trajectory they're on and you compare it with the trajectory of places like the United States, it's not looking good for the United States.
With the Treasury Department is so basic that you can't believe it doesn't exist already. So
I like.
So for example, like I mentioned,
interest here in asking you as a Marxist theorist. I recently interviewed Prabhat Patnaik from India, right. And I asked him about China, and he said that China's economic success in terms of growth and also ensuring development at the bare minimum, even though there are problems of inequality and stuff, is right. Obviously no one can deny. But to what extent China is going towards socialism remains an open question. And he was critical about a lot of things within reform and opening. And this is something to think about, because if you visit China...
It is true. It is true.
There is almost a large popular consensus that during the years of reform and opening, China has made great progress. Of course, there are people on the left who are critical of some of those things, but there is a general consensus that we developed during the reform and opening. As a Marxist theorist, or someone who looks at theories of the left, I'm very curious about what your thoughts are on China vis-a-vis.
I think the main thing that people are not understanding is that there's this like historical context that most of you don't have, which is that the Soviet Union pushed for a very specific type of command economy. And they said that, and they were in charge of a very powerful state, and they made a lot of progress with the command economy. I don't want people to think that they didn't. They absolutely did. The fastest growing country in the history of the world before China was the Soviet Union, as far as economically. The development that happened in the Soviet Union was, especially early on, was unprecedentedly fast. Okay? There was a lot of people who believe strongly in the command economy is the only way to do socialism thing. And it was pushed by the most powerful, country in the world that represented socialism as the only way. And any other way was unacceptable. And so we have that kind of historical baggage when we're talking about, the Soviet Union eventually fell, but a lot of the thought that propped up the Soviet Union is still around on the left as like, oh, China is not really doing any kind of socialist stuff because they're not doing command economy. And I think that's anachronistic at this point. It's 2025. Like, we don't need to have the debates that we were having in 1975 anymore.
The whole socialist vision, the socialist utopia, socialist ideal, how much do you give China on that front?
Okay. China defines itself, at least the leadership does, as socialism with Chinese characteristics. They like that phrase. So let me pick up from that. I like that phrase too.
I do as well.
Why do I like it? Not for the reasons that they do. I like it because it situates China within the dominant tradition of socialism that emerged from the 19th century, which, in my own opinion, is not a particularly Marxist definition. Here's what I mean. If China is socialism with Chinese characteristics, then it is a particular case of socialism. That's what they're saying. It's a particular kind of socialism. So what's the socialism that is the general, of which this is one kind? That's how I'm trained to think. Okay, well, now I'm going to be very blunt and just in the interest of time. So Scandinavia and Western Europe clearly are socialisms. It's where it was born, out of England and Europe, socialism in the 19th century. And what it has meant there has been what I would call capitalism, because I define that as the organization of production around the dichotomy between employer and employee, in the way that I would define feudalism as the organization of production around the lord and the serf, or slavery around the master and the slave. These are without those kinds of distinctions, but recent human history is particularly focused on master-slave, lord-serf, employer-employee, and their variations.
And by that you mean the relationship between them,
yes.
The rent, profit,
all of that. So but basically organizing production in that way, that there's a small group of people who are masters and a vast array of people who are slaves, a small group who are lords, I'm a European example, and a mass of people who are serfs, who are not slaves, but serfs, and then a small group of people who are employers, and a mass of people who are...
I think I get where he's going with this. I think I understand where he's going with this, which is like, in the Chinese model, you have the small group of people that are Communist Party members, and then you have the great citizenry on which they are organizing production. And I think that is a totally fair critique for why it isn't communism and why it hasn't completely deleted the class distinctions. He's right about that. He's absolutely right about that. And that's why I think that, and that's what they would say, by the way. That's what the Communist Party would say of China. They would be like, yeah, this is not socialism. This is not communism yet. This is transitioning. In order to get to socialism, in order to get to communism, you have to have enough productivity in your economy. You have to have enough development to achieve that state, right? Like, you can't have capitalism without capital. So, and you can't have socialism without development. That's what they would say. That they tried to do socialism without development, and they found that they couldn't provide for the basic needs of everybody. They didn't have the productive forces available to actually give people true freedom. That's what they would say. Now, you could disagree with that if you'd like, but that's their experience.
Employees, I gave you that statistic, U.S. Census Bureau, 3% of Americans are employers, 97% are not. Okay, for me, that's capitalism. That's the uniqueness of capitalism. And what is European or Scandinavian socialism? It's when the government is assigned, collectively assigned, by the capitalists and the workers, emerging out of struggles between them. The government is assigned with the function of moderating, ameliorating, softening capitalism.
There's the post-war European.
Yeah, particularly. But it starts even with Bismarck in Germany in the 19th century. That's another conversation. But it's the government coming in and providing health insurance, or passing a minimum wage, or making sure that there aren't dangerous chemicals in the food, or a whole host of regulations, laws, all of that. That's one kind. Let's call it social democracy or democratic. I don't care. Look, it has gotten a variety of names.
I do think that one of the things when we were talking about this is like more getting into theory now, which is when the Scandinavian countries, the kind of social democracies, the Nordic model was built, the people building it saw it as a ramp towards socialism. They weren't trying to say this is the final stage of government policy and we're done and we're not going to do anything. We've created the perfect system of social democracy. That's not what they said. They said, okay, we're doing this, and now we're going to start using certain techniques to transfer ownership from the capitalist class to the working class. They started building co-op models. They started building up the minor, what the hell is his name? Fuck, I'm mispronouncing it. Meidner plan. Meidner plan. That's what it's called. Why is my internet so slow? Why is fucking everything? The internet is crap. I hate the internet. Oh my God. Christ. Okay, so this is what they did. They were trying to come up with a way of creating a gradual socialization. Sweden's post-war welfare state had been built around a model designed by LO economists Rudolf Meidner and Gösta Rehn. The model stressed Keynesian fiscal policy, centralized collective bargaining between unions and employers, low inflation, and a push for wage equalization through a solidarity in wages policy. First, work should be equally paid, regardless of the profitability of the firm, the size or location of the workplace. What matters is the kind and nature of work and the skills which are needed to perform it. The second aim of the policy is equalizing of wage differentials, but not their total elimination. Different wages to be paid for different kinds of work. And then, so what they wanted to do is create a, let's see here. Let me see if I can talk about the plan they created. They wanted to socialize the economy gradually. Okay, if fully implemented, a number of wage earner funds would have been set up, financed through profit-related payments from firms in the form of voting shares, administered through union-dominated boards. In this way, as firms produce profits for their shareholders, the wage earner funds would gain larger and larger stakes in the company until they became majority owners. Excess profits would no longer benefit only the rich and powerful, and the benefits of holding capital will be shared across society. The funds will be controlled by workers within entire branches of industry, thereby ensuring that they would not provide an unequal benefit to workers in the most profitable companies and not contribute to increased differences in wages between workers. Unlike other profit-sharing schemes bound to specific companies, as has periodically been seen in the U.S. and other countries in the past. It was estimated by the Meidner Group that wage earner funds would have majority control over the stock market within a few decades. That was the plan. They were literally going to have companies be slowly bought up by their workers until workers controlled every major company. The reason why it failed is very interesting. They didn't actually get to do it. The employers strike back. So the capitalists, recognizing that they were creating a transitionary thing that may actually challenge their position within society, they were able to narrowly win an election to stop it. And that was the last true attempt to use a kind of like Richard Wolffian style model. And this is the model that Richard Wolff is an advocate of, by the way, in case you're wondering what he thinks on all this.
And I want to distinguish it from Soviet socialism, Russia. Why? Because they did something different. There, the government went beyond regulating, but displaced the employers, who were no longer private individuals.
By the way, chat, the Ukrainian war is probably not going to last very much longer. The Hexeth is starting to we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the Trump policy is basically, haha, Ukraine.
But the state replaced them. They didn't, but they could have called this socialism with Russian characteristics, or Soviet characteristics. Might have been better. Now, again, condensing a lot of material, but to be blunt, China is a hybrid of those first two. And so it qualifies as a distinct. It's neither Scandinavian nor Soviet. Why? Because it's roughly 50-50. It's remarkable. Half of it is sort of like Scandinavia, and half of it is sort of like the Soviet Union. And sitting on top of it is a state apparatus, and sitting on top of that is a Communist Party. And the Communist Party, this double layer of control and regulation, is quite effective in managing this hybrid. And what we have learned in the last 50 years is that this hybrid can grow faster than either of the parts it is the hybrid of. No contest, none. The Soviet Union was an extraordinarily successful growth story in the 20th century. But the Chinese have outdone them. Right. And
people don't know that, but basically from the Russian Revolution to the 70s, the Soviet Union was the fastest growing economy in the world. And then it stagnated, and that became Japan and South Korea. But from like the 1920s to the 1970s, the Soviet Union was number one. People don't really know that now because they see the post-Soviet economic collapse has been kind of like, it's kind of odd how memory works. Basically, like the 70s stagnation and 80s stagnation leading to the Soviet collapse in the early 90s. So people have kind of like, and the way that the Eastern Europe fell apart economically has kind of been like grafted back onto the memory of the Soviet Union prior to its collapse. It's kind of interesting how that has happened.
That has to be, it seems to me, straightforwardly admitted. But notice in the way I talk, and I don't want to offend people, for me, I understand that, and I accept that as a kind of socialism. They are in the tradition of, and I think that tradition attracts me because for the mass of people, it strikes me as a definitively demonstrated improvement in the quality of the lives those people are now able to live. Whether it be what they gave to Europeans in their thing, or what the Soviets gave to the Russian people in their thing, and what Mao and now Xi Jinping have given to the Chinese people.
I think that's a really good point that Chaotic says. It stagnated because they kept a wartime mentality. They couldn't pivot fast enough, and Gorbachev just fucked it further up. I think the main difference between the Soviet Union, the Communist Party of Russia, or of the Soviet Union, and the Communist Party of China, is the Communist Party of China figured out something. They learned something from the collapse of the Soviet Union, which is we need to be the best at consumer goods and light industry. We need to make raising the standard of living of our people, giving them feelings of progress as our number one thing. Like, we need to make sure that people in China are like, my life is better than it was 10 years ago. And like, just keep doing that. And like, that is their mission. And that's why they have such a firm grasp on China. Like, the communists are nowhere. They're not going to, like, Xi is very popular in China. This is not my opinion. This is the opinion of Harvard political scientists who have tried to study it. Like, there is very little, like, he's probably one of the most popular leaders in the world. Like, that's just a fact. And there's people I don't like that are very popular leaders. For example, in India, you know, like Modi is probably one of the most popular leaders in the world too. Nowhere near as popular as Xi, but definitely more popular. I don't know. I need to look at more recent Indian polls. I heard that was not the case. I heard Modi's kind of falling off. But I haven't been studying. I gotta be honest, chat. Indian and Sri Lankan politics are just so depressing. The Soviets were over dependent on oil exports, and the oil crash screwed them. Yeah, the other thing is the Soviets were not integrated in the global economy like China is. So they weren't given an advantage. They weren't able to like bring in resources that were under the Western Bloc, which involved most of the world because those were the colonial powers, the ex-colonial powers. The Soviet Union was locked out in a lot of ways that China is not. And like when Wolf says that the Communist Party as like a hybrid model of socialism and capitalism is growing faster than capitalism or socialism ever did, that's true because they figured out how to play the game internationally. Like the Soviet Union's diplomacy is nothing compared to China's diplomacy. The Chinese have the best diplomats in the world. The Chinese have the best spies in the world. So they are like lapping us.
If socialism means a better deal for the employee class within capitalism, they've delivered, which is why China's leadership is secure in its situation. In Russia and Scandinavia.
By the way, if you look at like a lot of people would be like, "Oh, working conditions in China are worse than they are in the U.S." And my answer to that would be not for long. The Chinese have basically said, "We need to consume more stuff. We need to do more services, and we need to do more consumption internally. We need to, raise our standard of living here, and we need to not be so focused on giving treats to America and Europe. We need to start consuming some of our own treats." And that they have an absolute opportunity to have their economy skyrocket from that.
Scandinavia, there is the further problem that their lesser achievements were unfortunately combined with the targeted viciousness of the private capitalism, so they couldn't survive. They're gone in Russia. Putin is not that. And in Europe, they are on the defense and they're shrinking. France is, of course, France is the exception. But so where does that leave me? Well, I understand Marx's work to have been the critique of the employer-employee way of organizing production. Since this was driven by capital, which in Marx's language, I shouldn't say this, but I will, which I read in German, because it's my first language, so I'm familiar with German. When he talks about Kapital, he uses words like Verhältnis. In German, that means relationship. He's interested in the relationship. And that relationship, it's like if you're interested in the relationship of marriage, well, then you have spouse one and spouse two, and they are linked by a set of activities that, then there is employer, employee, and they are linked, and that's what he's...
Chat, what... Wolf be like, if you're interested in marriage, they're linked with certain activities. He might as well just did this, They're linked with certain activities. It's like, okay, dude.
He's interested in understanding, but he's not a neutral. He's crystal clear to me that he hates the relationship of employer to employee, seeing it...
It is a disgusting like, who doesn't hate it? Like, it really is disgusting. Like, can you imagine, like, whenever I imagine a really disgusting relationship, I think of Ethan Klein with any of his employees. Like, if that doesn't make you a socialist, nothing will. Like, imagine being an Ethan Klein employee. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh my God. Imagine having Ethan Klein and his wife ordering you around and humiliating you and shutting you up. Oh God. I don't know how much Dan is being paid, but there's no amount of money that I would be paid to be Dan. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine being Dan for a second, where you have to like censor yourself and you have to like, try to clean up his messes, and you have to listen to him whine and complain and yell at you and disrespect you to your face. And you have to just nod along. Oh my God. And like, just looking at the way Dan has to live makes me a socialist. It recommits me to socialism, because nobody should have to live like that. Nobody should have to be a Dan. You should have respect. You should be treated with respect inside of your workplace.
As a root cause of social horror. not the only cause, not the main cause, none of that. It's an important cause, and he is devoting his life to it, not because it's more important than other things, here comes Althusser, but because it gives you an angle of understanding that other people have repressed, mostly in themselves. So they don't think that, they don't ask about that way.
The alienation part.
Yes, in part. But it's also, I use metaphors. Unless you're an unusual person, you don't think a great deal. When you think about your mother and your father, you don't think about the sexual relationship. It's awkward. For all kinds of taboo reasons. I mean, there's nothing intrinsically awkward about it. But you do not, unless you're unusual, discuss with your mother what she and your father did that produced you, for example. Everybody knows, but, okay. So Marx, I think, if he were here, would say, everybody knows. You know when you go to work that employer wouldn't give you $20 an hour unless you know. You can't say it,
right?
Not even to yourself. But if you're lucky, you sit in a room where a character like me says it with a smile, right? Then you can get it. Just like if a comedian starts making jokes about your parents' sex activity, you will laugh because you will recognize you knew that. You didn't say it, but you knew it.
You didn't want to think about it. It was in the back of your head because your existence is the proof of your parents' sexual activity, right? Like the fact that you exist is the proof of your parents' sexual activity. So your very essence, the fact that you are here is the fact that your parents got down, right? And you want to not think about that, okay? You want to put that in the back of your mind. You want to be quiet about that. You don't want to look down and go, oh my God, I'm looking at the products of my parents having sex.
Anyway, so Marx, I believe, analyzes capitalism by focusing, I use the word entry point in my writings, but focusing on the relationship of employer to employee. And he does that as a critic because his goal is a revolutionary break from that relationship to a different one. And that different one, in my judgment, is if the employer-employee relationship disappears and is replaced by a community. I think that's why words like socialism and communism appeal to Marx, because he wants the workplace, wherever that is, could be in the home, could be at the store, could be in the factory, could be in the government, wherever it is, where people are working to produce something, good or a service, they do it as a collective. One person, one vote, a group of, like in a community where we all live, but we all vote for the mayor. If we have a mayor, you get a vote for the mayor, one, I get one, my neighbor gets one, and we have to work out an agreement. Or if we can't agree, how we decide between, and we do all that. And in the West, this is often called a worker cooperative. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be called that. It does have other names. It could be, you could mean, the word commune could mean that. All kinds of, I'm sure different cultures, because this is not a new idea. This is an old idea. So my guess is in all major cultures, yours, mine, anybody else's, it exists with whatever name and whatever nuance, but it exists. So for me, the question is, like Prabhat, it's an open question. On the one hand, you have a government that proclaims its loyalty to Marx, its Marxist quality, its Marxist commitments. And I take that seriously. I take that seriously. On the other hand, they haven't done it. I understand that doing that is an immense act. I assume it'll be very difficult. I can understand hesitancy to do it if there are risks, as there surely are. So I'm left, like he is, saying it's an open question. I'm not going to condemn them because they haven't done it yet. Right. I think that's empty. What does that get you? But I'm not going to say, well, they've done it. That would be crazy too. They haven't done it. I'm open to being told that I shouldn't think about it this way, that there are other ways. Again, I'm sure that's true, and who knows? I'm not going to foreclose on it. But it seems to me they've done enough for the Chinese people. You know, my first introduction to
that's my take on it. My take on it is why keep if the Chinese Communist Party is completely uncommunist and unsocialist, like many detractors on the anarchist left say, why don't they just throw it out? Why keep it? Why not just follow the path of every other anti-communist state and just go liberal? Like, why not? Why own so much as state-owned enterprise? Why put billionaires in prison? What's the point? Why not? Why not just be like Putin? And I think that is the question that I think the detractors can't answer, because it's just they aren't doing that. They're not following a Putin model, and they are focused on raising the standard of living of Chinese people. That's just a fact. So they are certainly not socialist or communist, but they are approaching a model that is unique and has objectives that are clearly not just making as much money for the elites as possible, as we see in the US or Russia.
The Chinese was when I was a high school student, and I was given a book, a novel, by an American, I believe she was American, Pearl Buck. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever heard of it. The book is called The Good Earth. It's a novel about China before, I don't know, China in the 1920s or 30s.
Oh my God. China in the 1920s or 30s was probably one of the worst places in the history of the humanity. Like, China before the Communist Party was one of the worst places ever to be a human being.
And, I don't remember all that much, but the book had an enormous, because there were descriptions. I believe she was an American missionary who went to China to bring Christian whatever it is, missionary spring, besides sexually transmitted diseases. The book was about poverty, and I learned about Chinese poverty. And it was well written. The book got prize. It wasn't, our teacher gave it to us because it was one of the good books you should give high school students. And all I could think of was the passages of mothers who could not sustain the babies and left them by the side of the road, and all of which I later learned was had that in Europe for centuries. I didn't know that then. But for me, it was an introduction. And once I understood what had happened since 1949 to China as a society, then there would be no way that I wouldn't be respectful of what had been accomplished there.
Exactly.
I have a follow-up.
I think one of the biggest lies that people tell is that there was like the Great Leap Forward was like the worst that China has ever been, when in reality it was just the final chapter of the misery that China had been experiencing for hundreds of years. And it was the final famine. It was the final expression of the old era being rooted out so that China could finally get to the point where it is today. And a lot of the people who discredit like anything, the Chinese accomplishments, they want to exaggerate what is experienced in the Great Leap Forward, which had a lot of horrible shit, no doubt. While underestimating what the century of humiliation was like, or they don't even know what it was. And this is exactly the same thing they do in the USSR. Exactly. If you watch A Christmas Story, and when Randy wouldn't eat his mashed potatoes, mom says, think of the starving children in China. Whereas our generation was told, think of the starving children in Africa. Damn, you're right.
That when a payment goes out, it has to have the payment categorization code. It's like, what type of payment is this? You can't just leave the field blank. Currently, many payments, the field is left blank. And you have to describe what's the payment for, some basic rationalization. That also is left blank. So this is why, the Pentagon, when's the last time the Pentagon passed an audit? I mean, a decade ago, maybe? Ever? Really? And we want to just, in order to actually pass audits, you have to have financial information that allows you to trace the payments. And once in a while, the Treasury has to pause payments if it thinks the payment is going to a fraudulent organization. If a company or an organization is on a do not pay list, we should not pay it. I'm sure you would agree. If it's quite hard to get on that payment, the do not pay list, it means that this is someone that is just, it's like dead people, terrorists, known fraudsters, that kind of thing. We should not pay them. But currently we do, which is crazy. We should stop that.
Many transactions. And by the way, hundreds, thousands of transactions like that. We have a big team. And for the sake of the country, I hope that the person that's in charge and the other people that report to me that are in charge are allowed to do the right thing, namely make sure everything's honest, legitimate, and competent. But we're looking at just, when you look at USAID, that's one. We're going to look at the military. We're going to look at education. They're much bigger areas. But
are we going to look at the CIA and the NSA and the DIA and the
The USAID is really corrupt. I'll tell you, it's corrupt. It's incompetent and it's really corrupt. And I can't imagine a judge saying, well, it may be corrupt, but you don't have the right. You got elected to look over the country and to, as we say, make America great again, but you don't have the right to go and look and see whether or not things are right that they're paying or that things are honest that they're paying. And nobody can even believe this. Other people, law professors, they've been saying, how can you take that person's right away? You're supposed to be running the country, but we're not allowed to look at who they're paying it to and what they're paying. We have massive amounts of fraud that we caught. I think we probably caught way over a lot of billions of dollars already in, 2 weeks?
Yes.
And it's going to go to numbers that you're not going to believe. And much, as I said, much is incompetence and much is dishonesty. We have to catch it. And the only way we're going to catch it is to look for it. And if a judge is going to say you're not allowed to look for it, that's pretty sad for our country. I don't understand how it could even work.
On the buyout program, can you personally guarantee that?
Which one?
The buyout program, the offer to federal workers. Can you personally guarantee that the workers who opt in to resign now will be paid through September?
They'll get their money, but they're getting a good deal. They're getting a big buyout. And what we're trying to do is reduce government. We have too many people. We have office space. It's occupied by 4%. Nobody's showing up to work because they were told not to. And then Biden gave them a 5-year pass, some of them, 48,000 of them, gave them a 5-year pass, that for 5 years you don't have to show up to work. And let me tell you, this is largely, much of this stuff is because of Biden. It's his fault. He allowed this country, what he did on our border. What he did on our border is almost not as bad as what he did with all of these contracts that have come out. It's a very sad day when
I like one of the things about this that's very tough is it's like I'm imagining Bernie Sanders doing this. You know what I mean? Like he's orange as fuck, by the way. Holy, you guys are right. Holy fuck is he orange. Holy fucking hell is he orange. I'm thinking about Bernie Sanders doing all of this and it hurts my heart because like they're going to put in even dumber people, even more corrupt people, even more fascistic people, even more biased people. They're going to steal the money themselves. We need this shit. We do need a radical rebuilding of our federal government. And I think the one thing that I'm consoling myself with is like the more radical shit, the more stuff they break, the more freedom a left-wing reaction is going to have. If Donald Trump is doing all this crap, it is precedent in the future. That is my best cope.
we look at it. I can't even believe it. But many contracts just extend and they just keep extending, and there was nobody there to correct it. And that cannot be, I can't imagine that could be held up by the court. Any court that would say that the president or his representatives, like Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of State, whatever, doesn't have the right to go over their books and make sure everything's honest, I mean, how can you have a country? You can't have anything that way. You can't have a business that way. You can't have a country that way. Hey, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Head out.
Mark Fogel will be at the White House tonight at about 10 o'clock. If you want to come over, you can say hello to him.
Did you guys give anything in return?
Not much. No, they were very nice. We were treated very nicely by Russia, actually. I hope that's the
yeah, they got an American out of Russia.
Beginning of a relationship where we can end that war and millions of people can stop being killed. They've lost millions of people. They lost.
I think he was arrested for weed or something. He got like 12 years in prison, so he just got released.
In terms of soldiers, probably 1.5 million soldiers in a short period of time. We got to stop that war. And I'm interested primarily from the standpoint of death. We're losing all those soldiers. And they're not American soldiers, they're Ukrainian and Russian soldiers. But you're probably talking about 1.5 million. I think we got to bring that one to an end. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're moving.
Okay, that's a good pivot point. To Hexeth comments on the Ukrainian war, which is Mr. Trump, he added, does not support Ukraine's membership in NATO as part of a realistic peace plan. After a settlement, a durable peace for Ukraine must include robust security guarantees to ensure that the war will not begin again. But that would be the responsibility, he said, of European and non-European troops in a non-NATO mission, unprotected by NATO's Article 5. Oh, did I F? That was a mini F, chat. Sorry about that. Mini F. Mini F.
The Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is speaking. Let's listen.
The UDCG.
I dropped 484 frames there, chat. So I think that was either Twitch's servers or it was a mini F for me for like a second or like 5 seconds. I set the Starship link you asked for. Is it in the chat or did you DM me?
This is my first Ukraine Defense Contact Group, and I'm honored to join all of you. And I appreciate the opportunity to share President Trump's approach to the war in Ukraine. We are at, as you said, Mr. Secretary, a critical moment. As the war approaches its 3rd anniversary, our message is clear. The bloodshed must stop, and this war must end. President Trump has been clear with the American people and with many of your leaders that stopping the fighting and reaching an enduring peace is a top priority. He intends to end this war by diplomacy and bringing both Russia and Ukraine to the table. And the U.S. Department of Defense will help achieve this goal. We will only end this devastating war and establish a durable peace by coupling allied strength with a realistic assessment of the battlefield. We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
And there you have it. Everything that I've been saying about what is going to happen in Ukraine is happening because the United States, as I told you would happen, is bored. Any country, being an enemy of the United States is dangerous. Being a friend of the United States is deadly. And the Ukrainians, they thought, we're white. We're in the club. You're not. And you ain't. And everybody who bought the NATO bullshit propaganda about how the U.S. was going to fight for Ukraine till the kingdom come was insane. Think about how many people's lives could have been saved if Biden had pursued a diplomatic result 2 years ago. All the like hawks and warmongers being Democrats is really just insane. And you know, when this deal is finally signed and the guns go silent in Ukraine and the Donbass is ceded to Russia, is your life going to be any different? Will an American worker see 1 ounce of privation because of this decision? Is it even relevant? But yet it's so-called, you know, people in America are hating each other over this shit. It's insane. Eggs are going to go up. Eggs will probably go down when they sign a peace treaty. The war in Ukraine was one of the key drivers of inflation.
Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering. A durable peace for Ukraine must include robust security guarantees to ensure that the war will not begin again. This must not be Minsk 3.0. That said, the United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated
Complete Russian victory. Complete Russian victory. Putin won. That's it. He's going to get a bunch of territory of Russian speakers. He's going to get a guarantee that Ukraine is not going to enter NATO. He's going to get a if there's any kind of security guarantee, it's going to be for a rump Ukrainian state.
Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. If these troops are deployed as peacekeepers to Ukraine at
what? The United Nations that you guys are dismantling? Like, what organization is going to put this group together? This is basically, honestly, I would call this complete Russian victory. I would say that what Hexleth is saying as the official position of the United States is complete Russian victory. If the United States is not paying for this peacekeeping force, it's not going to happen.
At any point, they should be deployed as part of a non-NATO mission, and they should not
Zelensky passes 5% of the polls. Wow, let's go.
There also must be robust international oversight of the line of contact. To be clear, as part of any security guarantee, there will not be U.S. troops deployed to Ukraine. To further enable effective diplomacy and drive down energy prices that fund the Russian war machine, President Trump is unleashing American energy production and encouraging other...
Oh my God, dude. The Europeans got fucked so hard. They're losing access. Yeah, the Europeans. Hey, Europeans. I think I just realized what's happening. The United States has started to decide to treat you guys like Latin America. The United States has decided to treat Europe like Latin America, which means driving down your economy and turning you into a rump. And the key to do that is to make you dependent on American fossil fuels. So they got you to cut yourself off from cheap Russian gas, which will all go to China now. And you'll have to buy imported American liquefied natural gas. That's going to be significantly more expensive. So industrially, your industry will not be able to compete on an energy to energy basis because you shut down all your nuclear plants and you haven't developed enough renewable energy. Germany is toast. I can't believe it, dude. Utter European defeat. That's crazy.
Nations to do the same. Lower energy prices, coupled with more effective enforcement of energy
prices, you mean,
will help.
So
bring
basically,
Russia to the
okay.
table.
So basically, what has happened is Ukraine is fucked, and the United States says, "Fuck you to the Ukraine. We're not going to help maintain your independence. You can't join NATO." But we're going to say to Europe, you have to keep the energy sanctions. You're not allowed to buy cheap Russian oil and gas. You have to buy American oil and gas. Oh my God, dude. The Europeans just got to make a backstab. The amount of, I mean, like, that's crazy. Baltic states unplug from Russia and join EU power grid.
Safeguarding European security must be an imperative for European members of NATO. As part of this, Europe must provide the overwhelming share of future lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukraine.
It is time to short some European stonks.
Members of this contact group must meet the moment. This means donating more ammunition and equipment, leveraging comparative...
The Ukraine guy is sitting there as they humiliate his ass. They're humiliating his ass.
Advantages. Expanding your defense...
I honestly feel bad for Ukraine. Like, I told you this is what was going to happen. And I was called like a Russian supporter and shit. And I was just like, no, I'm just analyzing materially what's the future is holding. What's going to happen is Ukraine is going to be smashed. They're going to lose territory anyway. And when the United States gets politically bored of this conflict, we're going to cut them off and they're going to be fucking toast. And the Europeans aren't going to do shit. Hydrogen, thank you for the prime. AFD is winning in Germany. There's no hope for Ukraine. Ukraine is done. Same, I lost friends, LOL. You should message your friends and be like, I was right.
Industrial base. And importantly...
I'm sure they don't even care, honestly. Like, who cares about Ukraine now? like the Ukrainian flags are basically gone from Twitter. I have to take those Ukrainian flags out of your names on Twitter.
Leveling with your citizens about the threat facing Europe. Part of this is speaking frankly with your people about how this threat can only be met by spending more on defense. 2% is not enough. President Trump has called for 5%, and I agree. Increasing your commitment to your own security is a down payment for the future, a down payment, as you said, Mr. Secretary, of peace through strength. We're also here today to directly and unambiguously express that stark strategic realities prevent the United States of America from being primarily focused on the security of Europe. The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland. We must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. We also face a peer competitor in the communist Chinese with the capability and intent to threaten our homeland and core national interests in the Indo-Pacific. The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs to ensure deterrence does not fail. Deterrence cannot fail for all of our sakes. As the United States prioritizes its attention to these threats, European allies must lead from the front. Together, we can establish a division of labor that maximizes our comparative advantages in Europe and Pacific, respectively. In my first weeks as Secretary of Defense under President Trump's leadership, we've seen promising signs that Europe.
So the strategy, by the way, and this is the problem. This is the strategy that they're trying to pursue, and it's very cringe, but I'm just going to explain it to you. The policy strategy that the far right in America wants to pursue in foreign policy is they want Russia to break from China and join the American coalition as an extreme junior partner, like the way that we treat Ukraine. But that will never work. That will never work. First, Russia will never accept being a junior partner with the United States. Okay, number one. Number two, just because of cultural reasons and historical reasons, they would see that as completely being cucked. The second thing is they're a direct competitor of the U.S. on oil and gas. So the United States wants to sell Europe our oil and gas. Russia is direct material competitor. So the U.S. is incentivized to block Russian gas from entering Europe. So they're not going to break away from China because China is going to be a consumer of their major exports for the time being. China is lining itself up so that it can have leverage over Russia while at the same time not making itself vulnerable to Russia in the long term. That's why China is spending so much money on renewable energy and nuclear and fusion research. China wants to make itself green and not vulnerable to energy crunches from abroad. That's legitimately the plan. Do you think the Republican argument that Europe exported the cost of welfareism to the U.S. MIC? No, because the U.S. MIC is mostly just a jobs program and bloat, and it doesn't actually provide. Who was the Russia? Okay, since the Soviet Union fell, who was America protecting Europe from? Austria and Finland were not even in NATO. And they have some of the highest standard of living. So what are you talking about? Sweden wasn't in NATO. They had a better standard they had the most welfare. So what are you talking about? It doesn't even make sense. That's just cope that American conservatives tell themselves for why America sucks.
Sees this threat, understands what needs to be done, and is stepping up to the task. For example, Sweden recently announced its largest
also
ever
Russia directly borders China directly borders Russia. Russia joined the American coalition would be self-evidently suicidal for Russia. Yeah, very true.
Assistance package. We applaud them for committing $1.2 billion in ammunition and other needed material. Poland is spending 5% of GDP on defense already, which is a model for the continent. And 14 other countries are co-leading capability coalitions. These groups are doing great work to coordinate Europe's contributions of legal assistance across 8 key capability areas. These are first steps. More must still be done. We ask each of your countries to step up on fulfilling the commitments that you have made. And we challenge your countries and your citizens to double down and recommit yourselves not only to Ukraine's immediate security needs, but to Europe's long-term defense and deterrence goals. Our transatlantic alliance has endured for decades, and we fully expect that it will be sustained for generations to come. But this won't just happen. It will require our European allies to step into the arena and take ownership of conventional security on the continent. The United States remains committed to the NATO alliance and to the defense partnership with Europe. Full stop. But
I wonder how Europeans feel about hearing U.S. policy officials say they want Poland to be the model for the rest of their continent. I don't know. How do you guys feel? How do Europeans feel? Love from Canada. American politics has been very entertaining Canada lately. What's Canada? What's Canada? I've never heard of it. Is that the 52nd state or the 51st state? Is that your old name? Honestly, the U.S. Canada is border gore. We should annex Canada just to fix the border gore.
the United States will no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship which encourages dependency. Rather, our relationship will
my feelings haven't changed. Fuck America and capitalism. Yeah, we're coming for you.
Prioritize empowering Europe to own responsibility for its own security. Honesty will be our policy going forward, but only in the spirit of solidarity. President Trump looks forward to working together, to continuing this frank discussion amongst friends, and to achieve peace through strength together.
It seems like a secondary goal is to sell a shit ton of new weaponry to European countries. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Part of me wants to buy the, like, man, I fucked up. Do you think he'll change Greenland to red, white, and blue land? No, but that is something he would do. Which then brings us to the next section of the stream. This is the Mike is gonna mauled stream. The Democratic Party hates their base. There's a new article in Politico that is so insane. Oh, fuck, where is it? The voters were right about the economy. The data was wrong. Honestly, we should put this as the title instead of the Democrats hate their base, because fuck the Democrats. Who gives a fuck? I would call this article is so insane. Like, it's one of those things where you see it and it's everything that I've been saying for years. The cost benefit of pushing Russia into oblivion, especially given their horrible state, removing Putin to free their people is insane not to take. The U.S. military is aching for this too. Our foreign policy is crippling right now. That is the worst political foreign policy analysis I've ever seen. Stop playing video games so much. The entire United States military and NATO poured their best weapons and advisors into Ukraine and they got defeated. The Russians have nuclear weapons and they're not vulnerable. Their economy is growing. Everything we did to the Russians has backfired. Stop playing so many video games. Great response. You're insane. You're fucking stupid. You've been playing too much video games, man. The United States of America cannot defeat Russia without causing the risk of global thermonuclear war. We just wasted hundreds of billions of dollars in Ukraine, and all that happened is we destroyed their country and killed millions. Like, what do you mean? What the fuck are you talking about? Okay, let's go on to this. Voters were right about the economy. The data is... I don't know who you're listening to, but you need to stop. You need to stop. Whoever is telling you the shit that you just said to me, you need to delete everything. Now, obviously, you're not going to do it because me being shocked that people like you are real is not going to change the fact that you believe just babble. Just total babble. But in 6 months, you won't even think about Ukraine again. Sort of like you don't think about Afghanistan right now. You've forgotten completely about Afghanistan. 2 years ago, people like you were ranting and raving about Afghan women, and now you haven't talked about it in 6 fucking months. All right, voters were right about the economy. The data was wrong. Some chatter I was ranting about. Before the presidential election, many Democrats were puzzled by the seeming disconnect between economic reality as reflected in various government statistics and the public's perceptions of the economy on the ground. Many in Washington bristled at the public's failure to register how strong the economy really was. They charged that right-wing echo chambers were conning voters into believing entirely preposterous narratives about America's decline. Preposterous. But they rarely considered whether something might be responsible for the disconnect, whether, for instance, government statistics were fundamentally flawed. What if the numbers supported the case for broad-based prosperity were themselves misrepresentations? What if, in fact, darker assessments of the economy were more authentically tethered to reality? For the longest time, unemployment rate was a great way to measure the economy, because when you got a job, it paid a good wage, because we had strong unionization. We had inflation wages were growing faster than inflation. So having a job meant you were probably okay. Even if you had a shitty job, it would pay you enough to have a, studio apartment. You'd be able to fill the fridge. You'd be able to afford to take a bus, maybe go to a movie once in a while, hang out with your friends at the local dive bar. You may not have had an amazing life full of like luxuries, but you were able to make ends meet, even with a shitty job, right? That is no longer the case. Over half of homeless people have a job. Like it's not the same. On some level, I relate to the underlying frustrations. Having served as comptroller of the currency during the 90s, I spent substantial chunks of my career exploring the gaps between public perception and economic reality, particularly in the realm of finance. Many of the officials I've befriended and advised over the last quarter century, members of the Federal Reserve, those running regulatory agencies, many leaders in Congress, have told me they consider it their responsibility to set public opinion aside and deal with the economy as it exists by the hard numbers. For them, government statistics are thought to be as reliable as solid facts. This sounds like, honestly, when I listen to this sounds like Soviet dogmatism. Is that how it actually used to be? Yes. 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 When your parents were growing up, a married couple that both had a full-time job could easily afford a home in a desirable city. I mean, you could still see it today. You could go into neighborhoods in Los Angeles right now where homes go for $3 million, knock on the door of a house that's been around for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and you'll find a teacher and a bus driver in there. But when you go and see the new home, if you go to a house that was just purchased, it's somebody with some high-flying fucking job. The millennials, like what it takes to be in the same neighborhood as your parents is almost incomprehensible. In recent years, however, as my focus has broadened beyond finance to the economy as a whole, the disconnect between hard government numbers and popular perception has spurred me to question that faith. I've had the benefit of living in two realms that seem to rarely intersect, one as a Washington insider, the other as advisor to lenders and investors across the country. Toggling between the two has led me to be increasingly skeptical that the government's measurements properly capture the realities defining unemployment, wage growth, and the strength of the economy as a whole. These numbers have time and time again suggested to many in Washington that unemployment is low, that wages are growing for middle America, and that to a lesser or greater degree, economic growth is lifting all boats year upon year. But when traveling the country, I've encountered something very different. Cities that appeared increasingly seedy, regions that seemed derelict. Driving into the office each day in Washington, I noticed a homeless encampment fixed outside the Federal Reserve itself. And then I began to detect a second pattern inside and outside DC. This is objectively true. And it's true everywhere. America is a shit fucking hole. You know what has made me even more confident in this? I've lived in Austria a lot. Vio and I have kind of like taken like, I've like gone to Austria for like months at a time, as a tourist. And the experience of being in Austria, and then comparing to that to being the experience of being in Philadelphia or Los Angeles or Vegas or anywhere, it's night and day. America is a shit fucking hole. A shithole. I mean, I walked all around Vienna. I went to the like poorest parts of the city, which is there isn't really. I would go to the most, crime-ridden shit areas. I've never once, not once, did I feel like I was under physical threat and I had to have my fucking my radar dish up. Now, if you're in America and you're walking around the streets, you have to have your head on a fucking swivel. That's just reality. I will get approached by panhandlers constantly. There is a kind of simmering tension that exists that does not exist in Austria. I've encountered something very different. Cities that appeared increasingly seedy, regions that have seemed derelict. Driving into the office each day in Washington, I noticed a homeless encampment fixed outside the Federal Reserve itself, and then I began to detect a second pattern inside and outside DC alike. Democrats on the whole seem much more inclined to believe that what the economic indicators reported. Republicans, by contrast, seemed more inclined to believe what they were seeing with their own two eyes. Within the nation's capital, this gap in perception has had profound implications. For decades, a small cohort of federal agencies have reported many of the same economic statistics, using fundamentally the same methodology or relying on the same sources at the same appointed times. Rarely has anyone ever asked whether the figures they released hew to reality. Given my newfound skepticism, I decided several years ago to gather a team of researchers under the rubric of the Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity to delve deeply into some of the most frequently cited headline statistics. What we uncovered shocked us. The bottom line is that for 20 years or more, including the months prior to the election, voter perception was more reflective of reality than the incumbent statistics. Our research revealed that the data collected by various agencies is largely accurate. Moreover, the people staffing those agencies are talented and well-intentioned, but the filters used to compute the headline statistics are flawed. As a result, they paint a much rosier picture of reality than bears out on the ground. Take as a particularly egregious example what is probably the most widely reported economic indicator, unemployment. Known to experts as the U3, the number misleads in several ways. First, it counts as unemployed the millions of people who are unwillingly underemployed. That is, people who, for example, work only a few hours each week while searching for a full-time job. Second, it does not take into account many Americans who have been so discouraged that they're no longer trying to get a job. This is the thing that I think is really crazy, and I think why most people are insane. Like, for example, if you work as an Uber driver 5 to 10 hours a week, according to the unemployment statistics, you are employed. But you probably don't feel employed. You're probably like, I don't have a real job. I'm just doing this to try to like make rent or afford groceries. But there didn't used to have jobs like that. 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have Uber driving. It wasn't a thing. So you would have just been considered unemployed. We have this magic gig. We have this gig economy band-aid that's just completely obscuring reality. Shit is way worse than it has ever been, except for during the Great Recession in my lifetime. Like, this is dog shit. The economy sucks ass. You can, and by the way, the prices are insane. I don't know how people are surviving. I don't know how people are surviving. I don't know. I don't get it. Finally, the prevailing statistics does not account for the meagerness of any individual's income. Thus, you could be homeless on the streets, making an intermittent income, and functionally incapable of keeping your family fed, and the government would count you as employed. Thus, you could be homeless on the streets, making intermittent income, and functionally incapable of keeping your family fed, and the government would count you as employed. I don't believe those who went into this past election taking pride in the unemployment numbers understood that the near record low unemployment figures, the figure was a mere 4.2% in November, counted homeless people doing occasional work as employed. But the implications are powerful. If you filter the statistics to include as unemployed people who can't find anything but part-time work or who make a poverty wage, the percentage is actually 23.7%. In other words, nearly 1 in every 4 workers is functionally unemployed in America today. Hardly something to celebrate. No. Listen, if you if you have a gig job where you like deliver groceries for $8 an hour, you're doing great. You're employed. What are you complaining about? The economy's great. The picture is similarly misleading when examining the methodology used to track how much Americans are earning. The prevailing government indicator, known colloquially as weekly earnings, tracks full-time wages to the exclusion of both the unemployed and those engaged in typically lower-paid part-time work. Today, as a result, those keeping track are led to believe that the median wage in the U.S. stands at roughly $61,900. But if you track everyone in the workforce, that is, you include part-time workers and unemployed job seekers, the results are remarkably different. Our research reveals that the median wage is actually little more than $52,300 per year. Think of that. American workers in the median are making 16% less than the prevailing statistics would indicate. Perhaps the most prominent issue of the 2024 campaign, inflation, tracks much of the same story. Democrats spent much of the campaign pointing out that inflation had abated by Election Day, even if prices remained elevated from pre-pandemic levels. Moreover, many noted that wages, according to the prevailing statistic that only full-time work into account, had risen at a faster clip. These claims were based on observations drawn largely from the Consumer Price Index, an indicator that tracks the prices charged for 80,000 goods and services across the economy. But the CPI also perceives reality through a very rosy-looking glass. Those with modest incomes purchase only a fraction of the 80,000 goods the CPI tracks, spending a much greater share of their earnings on basics like groceries, healthcare, and rent. And that, of course, affects the overall figure. If prices for eggs, insurance premiums, and studio apartment leases rise at a faster clip than those of luxury goods and second homes, the CPI underestimates the impact of inflation on the bulk of Americans. That, of course, is exactly what has happened. My colleagues and I have modeled an alternative indicator, one that excludes many of the items that only the well-off tend to purchase and tend to have more stable prices over time, and focuses on the measurement of prices charged for basic necessities, the goods and services that lower and middle income families typically can't avoid. Here again, the results reveal how challenges facing those with more modest incomes are obscured by the numbers. Our alternative indicator reveals that since 2001, the cost of living for Americans with modest incomes has risen 35% faster than the CPI. Put another way, the resources required to simply maintain the same working class lifestyle over the last 2 decades has risen much more dramatically than we've been led to believe. No shit! No fucking shit! And here's the reality here. Those of us who are not rich know this. Now, what's crazy about me is that I am in touch while at the same time being successful doing my stream. And I have a lot of friends that are people that are trying to make their own way in the world and are poor. And I know exactly the struggles that they're going through because that was me 10 years ago. And so I pay attention to that shit. I'm not in some fucking bubble of upper middle class largesse like most of the people who shop at Rodeo Drive, or those are just upper class people, but you get my point. Like, the idea that the economy was good is an insane belief that I couldn't believe so many people online were saying. And then I realized the type of people that are talking about politics have a lot of free time. The effect, of course, was particularly intense in the wake of the pandemic. In 2023 alone, the CPI indicated that inflation had driven up prices by 4.1%. But the true cost of living, as measured by our research, rose more than twice as much, a full 9.4%. And then the other thing to keep in mind is this doesn't talk about, and this is the other thing, this doesn't talk about the increase of financing costs, right? So the prices have gone up much faster at 9.4%, but also interest rates have gone up. Interest rates have gone up, which means that if my car has gone up 9%, right? But the cost of the interest on my car loan has tripled. Now my car payment that would have been $300 is now $700. And I'm getting the same fucking car. And that laid bare the oft-quoted repost that wage gains outpaced inflation during the crisis following COVID-19. When our more targeted measure of inflation is set atop a more accurate measure of weekly earnings, it immediately becomes clear that purchasing power fell at the median by 4.3% in 2023. Again, whatever anyone may have claimed for the prevailing statistics during the run-up to the 2024 election, reality was drastically more dire for the great majority of Americans. Which brings us to the question of gross domestic product, a figure that stands perhaps as the most important single economic indicator because it is commonly viewed as a proxy for prosperity writ large. There is, to be sure, real value in tracking the sheer volume of domestic production, though GDP is an imperfect measure even of that. But as useful as that figure may be in the sense that it purports to track generalized national wealth, it is hampered by a profound flaw. It reveals almost nothing about how the attendant prosperity is shared. That is, if a small slice of the population is awarded the great bulk of the bounty from economic growth, while everyone else remains unenriched, GDP would rise nevertheless. And that, to a critical degree, is exactly what has happened. Here, the aggregate measure of GDP has hidden the reality that a more modest societal split has grown into an economic chasm. Since 2013, Americans with bachelor's or more advanced degrees have, in the aggregate, seen their material well-being improve. But the Federal Reserve's estimate, an additional tenth of adults have risen to comfort. Those without high school degrees, by contrast, have seen no real improvement. And geographic disparities have widened along similar lines, with places ranging from San Francisco to Boston seeing big jumps in income and prosperity, but places ranging from Youngstown, Ohio to Port Arthur, Texas, falling further behind. The crucial point, even before digging into the nuances, is clear. America's GDP has grown, and yet we remain largely blind to these disparities. Taking all of these statistical discrepancies together, what we have here is a collection of economic indicators that all point in the same misleading direction. They shroud the reality faced by middle and lower income households. The problem isn't that some Americans didn't come out ahead after 4 years of Bidenomics. Some did. It's that, for the most part, those living in more modest circumstances have endured the last 20 years of setbacks, and the last 4 years did not turn things around enough for the lower 60% of American income earners. To be fair, the prevailing indicators aren't without merit. For example, it is useful to know the wages of full-time employees have evolved. The challenge, quite separate from any quibbling with the talented people working to tell the nation's economic story, is to provide policymakers with a full picture of the reality faced by the bulk of the population. What we need is to find new ways to provide a more realistic picture of the nation's underlying economic conditions on a monthly basis. The indicators my colleagues and I have constructed could serve as a basis for or inspiration for government-sponsored alternatives. Regardless, something needs to change. This should not be a partisan issue. Policymakers in both parties would benefit from gleaning a more accurate sense of what's happening at the ground level of the American economy. In reality, both Democrats and Republicans were vulnerable to being snowed in the 2024 cycle. It just happened that the dissatisfaction during this particular cycle undermined the incumbent party. In an age where faith in institutions of all sorts is in free fall, Americans are perpetually told, for a classic quote from former Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, that while we may be entitled to our own opinions, we aren't entitled to our own facts. That should be right, at least in the realm of economics. But the reality is that if the prevailing indicators remain misleading, the facts don't apply. We have it in our grasp to cut through the mirage that led Democrats astray in 2024. The question now is whether we will correct course. And the answer is they won't. The answer is they won't, because the Democratic Party is the party of the upscale, college-educated suburbanite, the people for whom the economy has served quite well. But for everyone else, fuck you. And that's why the Democrats hate their voters. Which brings us to the next story. The next unbelievable story. Where is it? I try to find it. The story I'm trying to find, chat, is the one where about the Democrats attack. I thought I had it, but apparently I don't. Which is the story about the Democrats attacking their base. The country would generally be a different place if baby boomers truly and deeply understood that a $3.05 minimum wage in the 80s equates to $12.45 today, approximately 70% more money. Honestly, I don't even think that's correct. It's even more. You would need more than $12.45, because typically you're looking at inflation in the flawed way that we just talked about. Prices for a lower class life have gone up 10%, not 4 point whatever percent. Like, it's per year. It is not the same. It's Axios. Thank you. Scoop. Dems pissed at liberal groups move on indivisible. Okay, so if you're thinking about politics, chat, the most left-wing groups that are playing in the electoral game, you know, you have your like DSA, then you have Working Families Party, then you have Move On, then you have Indivisible, going from left to right, right? And Indivisible, and then there's more groups that you can sprinkle in there, but that's largely the way to look at that. So Move On and Indivisible, those are your more like center left groups, right? They're kind of like, you know, Warrenite, maybe even like Harris groups, right? Like Harris 2020, not Harris 2024, right? They're liberal partisans, Democrats. A closed-door meeting for House Democrats this week include a gripe fest directed at liberal grassroots organizations, sources tell Axios. Members of the Steering and Policy Committee with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in the room on Monday complained activist groups like Move On and Indivisible have facilitated thousands of phone calls to members' offices. People are pissed, a senior House Democrat who was at the meeting said of the lawmakers' reaction to the calls. The Democrats said Jeffries himself is very frustrated at the groups who are trying to stir up a more confrontational opposition to Trump. A Jeffries spokesperson disputed that characterization and noted to Axios that the office regularly engages with dozens of stakeholder groups, including Move On and Indivisible, including as recently as Monday. Zoom in. There were a lot of people who were like, we've got to stop the groups from doing this. People are concerned that they're saying we're not doing enough, but we're not in the majority, said one member. Some Democrats see callers as barking up the wrong tree, given their limited power as a minority power in Congress. It's been constant theme of us saying, please call the Republicans, said Rep. Don Beyer. I reject and resent the implication that congressional Democrats are simply standing by passively. said APAC buyout rep Richie Torres. People are angry, scared, and they want to see more from their lawmakers right now than floor speeches about Elon Musk. Indivisible co-founder Leah Greenberg told Axios. Indivisible is urging people who are scared to call their member of Congress, whether they have a Democrat or Republican, and make specific procedural asks. Our supporters are asking Democrats to demand specific red lines that are met before they offer their vote to House Republicans on the budget when Republicans inevitably fail to pass a bill on their own. Move on officials decline to comment. So in other words, we have, ladies and gentlemen, a Democratic Party. You remember when people said, well, if you vote for Kamala, we'll just push her to the left. I'd rather have Kamala as my enemy and Hakeem Jeffries than Donald Trump. We'll push them to the left. We'll push them to the left. You remember that stupid fucking bullshit? It totally failed in the Biden administration with the trifecta. So when the Democrats control the government, we can't do anything. And when the Democrats are outside of the government, they can't fight. So they can't do anything in power, and they can't resist when they are a minority party. This party is fucking worthless. We have to get rid of it, man. We have to get rid of it. Why are there no leaders talking about getting rid of this fucking party? It is useless. We can look down in Mexico and see what they did. They started their own left-wing party, and they have a 77% approval rating. David Sirota said, there is a strong argument that if every single Dem party lifer in D.C., every politician, staffer, advocate, think tanker, media influencer, pundit, etc., just resigned, it would be better for the party renewal and the world, and would certainly not be worse than it is right now. An entire generation of the Democrats' professional political class has made a great living in the Capitol, absolutely failing to prevent, and in many cases actually facilitating what we are living through. It is time to just say that out loud and admit it. And I said, this is basically admitting that the entire institution of the Democratic Party is damaging and worthless. If that's the case, why aren't we starting a new party like AMLO did in Mexico? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. Why the fuck are we sticking with the Democrats? Why? Why? Give me a good fucking reason. Give me one. Because money. You don't think we can raise money? Okay, we'll lose out on the billionaires, which then make you adopt unpopular policies. They make you adopt unpopular policies and you lose the fucking election anyway. You lose the election anyway. Kamala Harris had way more money than Donald Trump did, and she lost the election anyway. What good is the money if you do just fucking lose? Who will pay all the fail kids of rich people to be consultants? Yeah, to your point about standard of living, we're creating a tenants unit here in my city and want to know that everyone has come to accept, and everyone doesn't even think to raise it an issue. They're pretty much paying 50% of our income towards housing, all of us, and we have to become so disenfranchised that we don't even think about that being something we can mention or change. Yeah. The squad is a joke. And you're right. The squad is a joke. The squad has failed to meet the moment. There's no doubt about that. In what universe is Rubio a better appointment than Gabbard? If you are a warmongering hawk. And I'm not saying Tulsi Gabbard is good, but Tulsi Gabbard is certainly better than Marco Rubio. The squad died when Bush and Bowman got primaried. I mean, Bush and Bowman were not very good politicians.
Hey, dude, if you're going to do hits on national television, how about put it back up? How about not doing it? Like if somebody showed up to do an interview with us and they're looking down in their laptop like this. Okay, yeah, put it on the screen. Like they're looking down in their laptop like this. They got no microphone. Invest in a $25 microphone. You're talking to the American public. You don't know how to do this. You don't know how to play this game. You are not equipped for this. You may be a very great congressman. You may be very nice. You may have great voting record. You are not equipped to do this. Your staff is not equipped to do this. No one associated with you is equipped to do this. The people who elected you over AOC are not equipped to do this. Yep. Look in the mirror, understand the stakes that are going on, and say, I'm stepping aside. This is just absurd. It's absurd. Hey, dude, the plan that is on the right, for lack of a better term, to undermine our government. We are seeing basically, broadly speaking, 2 or 3 different constituencies meld together. Heritage Foundation, longtime Republican conservative thinkers. Steve Bannon, a sort of like a pseudo-populist, ethno-nationalist, or like hyper-nationalist, somewhat thuggy fasci, and this sort of tech bro fascist, monarchist, authoritarian impulse all come together with an agenda that they can agree on, that being the destruction of the administrative state. Tech bros want to sprinkle onto this like some type of AI, sort of futuristic vision. But at the end of the day, there's still this sort of like, from them, neo-Leo Straussian vision of them being in charge, a neo-aristocracy or neo-feudalism. And then also, there's this nice mixture of like a theocratic feudalism, which is really very similar. I mean, all feudal regimes that we've had for the most part in our history have been ultimately founded on the idea that, well, the king is there because of God. Not necessarily maybe the theocratic rule, but certainly the basis of their authority comes from God. So all of this is coming together. We're facing this dilemma. We have no legislative power. We have no real democratic leaders who are presenting themselves. There's a couple. And here is one person vying for that role of leader. He is the chair of the what is it?
Ranking member.
I should say the ranking member from the Democrats. They voted for him to be, because they wanted him to be the bannerman on the committee, the House Oversight Committee, because this is a position where these guys are going to have the opportunity to sort of show and communicate to the American public what is going on is fundamentally wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jerry Connolly, one of the most sprightly cancer patients you've ever seen.
Question is to you, sir, why would Republicans block bringing Musk in for questioning? And why wouldn't Musk, I mean, he's been very vocal on X, why wouldn't he just want to come in and talk about his intentions?
Good questions all. My motion to subpoena him, I thought, would have some broader support on the Republican side. It had none. You mentioned that they squashed it, but they had a scramble. They were collecting people and running into that hearing room, and they were able to table the motion on a one vote majority, 20-19. But the entire
Okay, pause it for a second. This is the part that makes this clip amazing. This is you can't see her, but Alex Witt, MSNBC's Alex Witt responds, and I will tell you something. If you have children, you know the response that she just gave. Mm-hmm. And if you ultimately ever have children, you will come to understand this response. This is like you're encouraging a child from something that really doesn't really shock you. But you're like, okay, you were able to take a poop. Good for you.
Half of it is on the seat, but good job.
Good for you. No, but no. Whoa,
Jerry's
good.
like, the Republicans were really owned. You didn't see it, but trust me, they were scrambling behind the scenes.
They had to scramble.
Wow.
Oh, we have been very effective. They had to scramble.
Their handshake before they punched us in the face.
You have absolutely no idea. They were running around like, what's going on? I can't find my notebook. It was hilarious.
Until they found it.
Okay, go back and just like, you can hear Alex Witt like, whoa. I mean, God.
You mentioned that they squashed it, but they had a scramble. They were collecting people and running into that hearing room, and they were able to table the motion on a one vote majority, 20-.
This is like the last place team being like, oh, sure, we got swept in the series, but did you see they had to win at the bottom of the ninth in the last game? It was pretty close. It's pretty close. They had to hit a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth to beat us. And it's like, you fucking lost again, you loser. That's a good quote. It's like, whoa, we didn't lose by as much as you thought we were going to lose. We covered the spread. The Democratic Party, hey, we didn't win, but at least we covered the spread.
19. But the entire tenor and topic of the hearing shifted to Elon Musk, didn't it? So we achieved our goal. And we're going to use the hearings. We're going to use every part of the bullet point we've got to continue to hold them accountable. Who is this unelected South African emigre who's the world's wealthiest man, apparently, running the U.S. government? Who elected him to do anything?
Well, she's blown away by that. Okay, here's the thing. I would just put the image back up on the screen. Okay, just put the split screen between the two of them back up there, because I just want to point something out. He's going to try and communicate to the American public, right? And he's doing this by telling us about what happened in a committee where the Republicans there had to really scramble. The number of people who saw that committee could fit in this room is my guess. And I got news for you. The Majority Report headquarters, not huge. Not huge. Hey, dude, if you're going to do hits on national television, how about put it back up? How about not doing it like if somebody showed up?
House Republicans have released their budget resolution. They're aiming to cut Medicaid by $880 billion and cut SNAP by at least 20%. They're cutting the American poor.
To do an interview with us, and they're looking down in their laptop like this. Okay, yeah, put it on the screen. Like, yeah, they're looking down in their laptop like this. They got no microphone. Invest in a $25 microphone. You're talking to the American public. You don't know how to do this. You don't know how to play this game. You are not equipped for this. You may be a very great congressman. You may be very nice. You may have great voting record. You are not equipped to do this. Your staff is not equipped to do this. No one associated with you is equipped to do this. The people who elected you over AOC are not equipped to do this. Yep. Look in the mirror, understand the stakes that are going on, and say, I'm stepping aside. This is just absurd. It's absurd.
And even if it was a Democrat who I don't think my politics would align with at all, like Jasmine Crockett, who took money from crypto and has voted to arm Israel. At least she fights and is partisan and
what are you talking about?
Right.
I can do this. What are you talking about?
The Democrats are really ill-equipped, not just to meet this moment in terms of the severity of the constitutional crisis that we're facing, but also in terms of the communication style.
But Emma,
hey,
you should have seen how they scrambled.
Oh, you're real.
You should have seen how they scrambled in the hearing room. They didn't know what they were doing.
The Republican panic, you wouldn't know her. We went to camp together. She goes to another school. But they're ill-equipped to meet the moment.
We locked the bathroom, and then for a long time they had to run around and try and find the key. It was great.
Jesus Christ. Okay. You good? You got it out of your system?
No.
Oh, all right. Well, the media environment, again, there's so much to consume, so much. And people can pick what they want. They can pick whatever podcast they want to hear, whatever. All of it's online. All of it's about getting people to click. You know who gets people to click is AOC. You know who gets people to pay attention to what you're saying? It's AOC. She knows how to communicate with people either directly in this kind of format or on social media. And that's what oversight is supposed to be about. It's why Pelosi stuck her on there in the first place. This is supposed to be about performing politics. That's really the primary function of that, performing partisan politics. And they had an opportunity to put one of our best communicators on that front at the top of it, and they chose this guy instead.
It really is just...
it was his turn.
Right. Seniority.
Sometimes you don't take your turn. I don't think, I think when seniority benefits Bernie Sanders, I think it should be absolutely respected, basically above anything else. But at a certain point, the people need to look themselves in the face is am I the leader for this moment?
Okay, the moment you are saying people need to act in some sort of virtuous way, as opposed to not having to face some sort of system of accountability, you've already lost. And I think this is the kind of problem with the Majority Report's analysis overall, which is the idea that the Democratic Party is ever going to be convinced by a million quadrillion arguments that they're incompetent. They're never going to. This party is fucking worthless. It's unfixable. The systems are broken. They're anti-democratic. They are corrupt. And there's nothing we could do to fix it. They're losing to Trump. Their approval's in the toilet. And their grassroots is yelling at them. And you know what the result is? They want to shut the groups up. They want to stop getting the phone calls. Because they're fine. And they don't have any accountability for losing. It's an anti-democratic party. It's its real name. And that's the reality. It's like, that's the fucking reality.
And this party just clearly has none of that instilled institutionally.
Did you deliberately invoke Hillary Clinton with the it's his turn? Because that was the exact same problem back then.
No,
I mean,
they just said the same thing.
And the Republicans don't have this. You'll notice that the Republicans don't have this problem because they don't have, and AOC explained this to us a few months ago when she came on our show, they don't have seniority rules. But the Democrats do. Maybe scrap those because right now the seniority and like the institutional my turn politics don't meet this moment. The Republicans are able to have more turnover, sometimes for better or for worse, with the Speaker or the House stuff, but because they don't have those artificial constraints. But it's all about protecting guys like Jerry Connolly when it should be about, oh my God, we are maybe speed running towards authoritarianism. Can we at least have people that can do partisanship?
Connolly is such a dinosaur. He was a co-sponsor of PAYGO in 2010.
He co-sponsored PAYGO.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12.
Okay, I gotta be honest. I've tried really hard to be nice to these like Vaushite types, like Cassie Pritchard, and her takes are just bad. Her takes are just substantially bad. Like, Will Standstill is trying to argue that the article we read in Politico by a extremely qualified economist talking about how he developed new methods of understanding underemployment. And he tried to say that, like, he tried to come up with a new inflation measure that actually talks about, like, the things that you spend your money on instead of yachts and jewelry. You know, the stuff that price increases actually affect you, like food and clothing and housing. And people are on this Will Standstill. No. People voted against us out of hate. They voted against trans people out of hate. And it's like, no, they didn't. People did not vote for Donald Trump because they hate trans people. Okay. And the people that did always vote Republican. All right. There wasn't some big dramatic shift toward the Republican Party because of spontaneous trans hate. Okay. The world sucks more. It's harder to make ends meet, especially if you're non-college educated worker. This is a fucking fact. Deal with it. And this Cassie person, like, posted, sorry, but he's right. This metric doesn't explain any of the political behavior leftists want to explain as being due to economic suffering. Things got better. People voted for Trump. Things did not get better. Things did not get better. You're wrong. You're wrong. They did not get better. It was better in 2018 to be a non-college educated worker and make ends meet than it is today. You are fucking wrong. You're wrong. Housing is significantly more expensive. Interest rates are significantly more expensive. Cars are more expensive. Food is more expensive. And wages have not kept up for the bottom people. If you're a college educated worker or above, you probably are slightly better off. For the people that shifted the most toward Trump, it is not the case. It's just not the case. And you know how we know that? Because Bernie Sanders' approval rating is still sky high. These are not people becoming right-wingers because they hate trans people spontaneously. This is anti-materialist, and it's nonsense. Things did get better for working-class people. Did you actually read the article in Politico? The answer is, and by the way, Cassie will never say, yes, I read the article, because they didn't read the article. Because the article very specifically goes through why the numbers that the government is using were not accurate reflections of our economic circumstances. They did, though. We have to stop pretending that 2024 was some rational punishment by class-conscious workers of dem elites. I never said... By the way, look at these ridiculous Vaushite straw-manning that they try to do. What is this Vaushite straw-manning bullshit? Yeah, Mike says that the workers are class-conscious. That's why they voted Republican. What? Shut the fuck up with this bullshit. I said they voted against the party that made their life worse, which is fucking true. It doesn't mean the Republicans are going to make it better. It was a bad vote. If I could make people vote for rational choices, class-conscious choices, I wouldn't have them vote for Republicans. And I wouldn't have them vote for Democrats either. Here's a metric. The house next to my brother went up for sale. He bought in 2016. With the price increase in interest rates, I'd have to pay $400,000 down for the same monthly payment. 150K more than his total house cost. There's no hope to own a home. Like buying a house in 2016 doesn't sound that long ago, but as economically, it's 100 years. What is used to Will Stansell's argument that even using their new metric of underemployment, it's still lower and was trending down after COVID because the wages are not keeping up. Wages are down. Cost of living is up. People have these gig work bullshit jobs they can take, so they are technically considered underemployed. Which before, when you were underemployed, you didn't have gig work in 2010. Gig work in 2010 did not exist. So if you were underemployed in 2010, it meant you had a traditional part-time job. Now we have underemployment being expanded for gig work, bullshit gig work. Like looking at these things, it's totally different. And when you compare us to 2018 to 2019, I'll show you. I'll explain it to you very clearly. Median household income to median home price. Here, I'll help you. Are you ready? Are you ready to see how things are worse? Okay, 2019, median household income to price ratio, 5.5. 5.5. Now it's the highest ever, 7.2. So basically, what this means is houses have gone up like 50% in price. Also, what were interest rates in 2019? 1%? You could mortgage a house. I remember my parents refinanced their home. I told them to do it. My parents refinanced their home in January of 2020. I think they refinanced their home at like the lowest that mortgage prices have ever been, or like a month or two off. Some people got less than 2% mortgage interest rates. I think they got something like 2.5% or 3%. I don't know. I'd have to ask. Now it's 7% Things are worse now than they were in 2019. You're delusional. You're fucking wrong. It's not even fucking close. You don't know what you're doing. Are you living at home with your parents? Do you not have a car payment? Do you not have mortgage? Do you not have rent? Do you not go to the grocery store? I legitimately do not know how the fuck you can think things are better now than they were in 2019. You are fucking crazy. It's not even close. Okay, you didn't read the article because it demonstrates that it did get worse for the people who have shifted the most toward Republicans. You aren't looking at the data. I tried to be as nice as possible, but like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? If you think the economy improved under Biden, you are insane. You are an insane person. Like, you should be housed. My rent is $1,000 higher since. God. I got really damn lucky, caught the low mortgage rates at a house before the prices really took off. If I sold today, I'd be up $100,000. Places around me, the VHCOL area, are 400K in 2018 are now 750K. Plus mortgage rates are a lot higher. Okay, let's use this example that JBond1 just said. JBond1, I want to use the numbers that you said. Hold on, let me bring up I want to bring you up. I want to bring you up on the screen so everybody could read. You said 400K in 2018 and 725K. Okay, what were mortgage rates in 2018? Can someone look up mortgage rates in 2018 and 2019 for me? Let's go ahead and do a little quick test. I want to explain it. Why does Google not have one anymore? What the fuck? Okay, whatever. It's fine. I don't give a shit. All right, you said 450 for what would you say the price was? 400. 400. Not 45. 400. Okay, 20% down payment. Average 30-year fixed by year 2019 was 4.2 because it's funny. 4.200. Zip code. What's the area you said? You just said very high cost of living area. Let's just use, who gives a fuck about the zip code? I have to make one up. Dude, let's do 19204 104 because that's Philly. Okay. Right now, that would be $1,874 a month. $1,874 a month. The 30-year fix today is 702%. And he said the house was now $750,000. From $1,900 a month to $5,000 a month. Things are the same, guys. Things are the same. Things are the same, guys. Things are totally the same. Now, if you bought your house in 2019, that's awesome for you. Congratulations. You just made a shit ton of money. Congratulations, you made $500,000 of house appreciation. This is what this means. So the mortgage payment for buying the same house has almost tripled. This is why when people try to argue with me that things are fine, I say, what are you talking about? Housing prices are higher than they've ever been, ever. In the 80s, when they had high interest rates, the price of the house was low because, you know, you had a high interest rate on the loans. So the price, you could afford to borrow much money. Now we live in a world of high interest rates plus high prices. I did a cash out refi in 2020 right before the pandemic. I got 3% mortgage. I had to sell the house in the divorce. If you had just taken that money and put it in the stock market, you would have basically been a rich guy. I got my mortgage at 4%. It's around the same time as Hassani explained the process, and I jumped the gun. If I had stayed at my apartment, it is $1,900 for a 2-bed, 1-bath now. I pay $100 for 30 years on my 3-bed, 2-bath condo, including insurance and tax. Congratulations on that, man. I'm very happy for you. I'm legitimately happy you were able to get your condo for so cheap. Anyway, chat, we have been live for 4 hours. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting it so I don't have an aneurysm in my brain from people telling me things are fine. I was lucky enough to be able to buy in 2021. I definitely could not afford my own home if I was buying today. You absolutely could not. I bought my house in rural Texas in mid-2022. A monthly payment of $2,400 and a house worth $225,000. I mean, 2022 wasn't a great time to buy a house. It's better than now. Anyway, chat, if you enjoy the content, please consider supporting it by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 sub. If you have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account. You get 1 free sub a month. That's your Twitch Prime sub. How can we make the Dems lose faster? Should we join the Dems to shift it further right? No, it's collapsing already. I outright inherited a house in the Vegas area in July. I'm trying to sell it currently. All right, chat. I guess my message that the economy sucks is not the best way for me to get money, huh? I'm making people all panicky. Listen, forget the economy sucks for a second and pay my check. Give me a paycheck for all this amazing political work I'm doing. I guess telling you how everything sucks is not the best way to make money, huh? That's why you need to invest in the Central Committee stream. The best way to grow your it's the Ministry of Sustainer, okay, guys? It's the Ministry of Sustainer. All the money you put into the socialist treasury will come back to you 1,000-fold, right? That's what they say. Okay, I'm kidding. This is a meme. I'm memeing off of Donald Trump's spiritual advisor. Send in that $1,000 check. Send in that $200,000 check. Send in that $3 million check to the Central Committee. Because if you don't, you will not see happiness. Mike from the PA to the moon. Tofu Ghost, like legitimately, I have considered becoming Dark Mike. And just being like, I guess it's time to be a scammer. And just, you know, go and pump and dump MAGA coin, MAGA cum coin, you know, the Don Jr. coin, you know what I mean? Just doing Dark Mike and just doing nonstop rug pulls. Not of you guys. I wouldn't tell you guys about it. I love my audience. I would never do anything to you guys. I would never steal from the left. I would only steal from the right. It'd be a Robin Hood ass shit. You could be the better version of the stock guy. Oh, I could do lolcow coin and just have a picture of Ethan Klein as the avatar. Yeah, Stalin robbed banks to finance the Bolsheviks. Socialists should be doing scams. Fuck the law. Okay, dude. We're kidding. That's a joke. We will never do crimes here. Anything we would do would be totally above board. All right, chat. I wanted to show you this from Climate Town because it's a really good video. And it pissed me off so much when I saw this clip go viral. I actually replied to this stupid fucking post. Being a climate change influencer right now has got to be tough. Can we just buy a town in dead parts of PA and have the best zoning? I mean, we could. I could do a cult. If we went to somewhere like rural, if we went to like Missouri or we went to like Pennsylvania or we went to like, you know, we could easily go to Berks County and start a cult. And that would be still pretty close to Philly and shit. We could go to like the eastern area of PA. The eastern area of PA is very close to New York City. It's only like it's like not even an hour drive from New York City. It would be an ideal place for a cult. It's like an hour from Philly too. That would be a very good cult location. I wouldn't want to go west of that because then it's really, you're just too far away from like actual nice things. I think like, although I bet you the value of the land in Easton is exploding right now. It's a really good place to speculate, if I had to say. Like the Lehigh Valley area is a really good place to speculate. I think Chicago and Pittsburgh are probably the places that I think are the most likely to have a real estate boom eventually. Once climate change really starts kicking in, I think Pittsburgh and Chicago are going to be the place. Detroit too. Buffalo, listen. Buffalo sucks. Buffalo really does suck. Anyway, chat, we are 11 subs away from the Hype Train goal, the sub goal. The top sub gifter and the top bit donor get the Hype Train conductor badge next to their name, which is a golden locomotive. So help the stream stay alive by supporting the stream. There's a lot of people here who are working paycheck to paycheck, parents of young children, college students, people on a fixed income or because of retirement or disability. If you're a person who purchased your house in 2020 or before, you rich son of a bitch, you better gift me some goddamn subs. If you're like, I have a 3% or 2% mortgage or a 1.9%. Wow, I pay $800 a month for my 5-bedroom house. You owe me some goddamn subs. I don't care if you have to get an HLOC fucking loan. You have hundreds of thousands of home equity. You might as well use it to give me 5 fucking subs. God damn it, I hate you people. All right, let's keep going.
With the verbal ass whooping of a lifetime.
You dropped 150 grand on a fucking education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library.
My favorite part of any TV show or movie is when our guy just destroys some dipshit with the verbal ass whooping of a lifetime.
I hate this. This sucks. This blows. I couldn't disagree more. This is lib content, man. This is lib content, but we're gonna watch it anyway.
Dropped 150 grand on a fucking education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library.
But I know something about you. You went to Cranbrook. That's a private school. What's the matter, dog? You embarrassed? This guy's a gangster. His real name's Clarence.
I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7 in this building.
Actually, the Eminem part was the good one because, like, that's the only working class person.
President stands, nobody sits.
Devastating. And sometimes the damage extends beyond the screen. Paul Giamatti talked shit about Merlot in the 2004 wine thriller Sideways.
And if they want to drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot.
No, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I am not drinking any.
Honestly, like, if I'm the leader, it's gonna be run by an army camp. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. You don't want that.
Fucking Merlot! And it seems to have contributed to an actual decline in Merlot sales. So when I saw a viral TikTok clip from the new show Landman featuring a crotchety Billy Bob Thornton spewing a bunch of weird lies about wind turbines, you know, it really bummed me out.
By the way, Merlot is a good wine. Merlot is a good wine. Not my favorite. I'm a basic bitch who loves a good cab, but Merlot is a great wine.
You want to guess how much oil it takes to lubricate that?
Is there an ethical way to invest in the stock market? My answer to that is Mark's invested in stocks. That's my response to that question. Who gives a fuck? If you're talking about, like, would I invest in, like, the most evil companies in the planet? I probably wouldn't. But the reality is buying a stock is not really, I mean, to be honest with you, is not really investing anything into the company. The company gained their you know, the money from selling the stocks when they issued the shares. So if you're not buying the IPO or you're not buying a new offering of shares, you're not really giving money to the company. All in all, I would say I don't invest in shitty companies, but you have to prepare for retirement. Here's the thing that many people need to hear. You live in a capitalist society, which means I buy health insurance. I buy umbrella coverage. I buy car insurance. I buy stuff, you know, stuff like that. Do I agree with those things? No. But I also know that I live in a capitalist society, and if I get sick, I need health insurance. If I get sued, I need umbrella coverage. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have to self-insure. And, you know, that's just the way it is. I have to be a realist to survive in the system. I don't exploit people as much as I can avoid it, but I try to survive. And I try to have a happy life. Being a socialist doesn't mean you need to sacrifice every single thing about yourself that could make you happy. My aunt said some towns by Sailorsburg and Lehigh Valley still have KKK marches and cross burnings. Maybe we need to start a compound around there. I don't know Sailorsburg.
That fucking thing and its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it. And don't get me started on. You want to guess how much oil it takes?
Viral TikTok clip from the new show Landman featuring a crotchety Billy Bob Thornton spewing a bunch of weird lies about wind turbines. You know, it really bummed me out.
You want to guess how much oil it takes to lubricate that thing? And its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it. And don't get me started on solar panels and the lithium in your Tesla battery.
And I'm not saying that TV needs to fact police their characters, but I am worried that the millions of people who saw the out-of-context clip might assume that the incorrect statements of a fictional television character are actually very smart and need to be spread far and wide. And luckily, spending a month of my life getting to the bottom of this is fun and interesting to me for some reason. Hi, I'm Raleigh Williams, a guy with a climate science and policy degree and exactly 0 memorized Bible verses. And this is an episode about how disinformation gets around the internet.
There's some pretty good Bible verses out there. Like, this is my favorite. Whenever I meet a Bible believing Christian, I'm like, I always like to be like Leviticus 19:34. Treat the foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Treat them like native born Israelites and love them as you love yourself. Remember, you were once foreigners living in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Or as the King James Bible says, but the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. For ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. That's my favorite for my Bible-believing Trump supporters. I'm always like, Leviticus 19:34. This is funny because the foreigner residing you must be treated as native born. Like, that's the funniest sentence in the Bible for Christian conservatives. Mark 12:30. I don't know that I know Mark 12:30. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength. This is probably one of the worst verses of the Bible. This is some liberal ass bullshit. That's the thing I hate about modern Christianity more than anything. Modern Christianity has been turned into a consumptive act of individual. That's why Protestantism is the religion of capitalism. Because it's all about my personal connection with Jesus. Like you're buying a fucking moleskin boot. Like it's liberal, goofy bullshit. There's nothing about collective responsibility and good works and caring for your fellow man and sacrificing for others. It's all this like, if I believe in Jesus, then my soul will go to heaven, which is the most self-centered, anti-Christian belief. Fuck your soul.
Welcome to Climate Town.
The story of Sodom and Gomorrah was explicitly about punishing the population for harming foreigners, and conservative Christians retconned it to be about punishing the people for being queer. Yeah. Well, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where they want to rape strangers, they want to rape a male stranger who's an angel. Like, angels go down with to Sodom and Gomorrah, and they're like a mob gathers to rape them. Like, they were trying. Like, the point of that story is that these people are really evil. They don't care about others. They take advantage of foreigners. They're scum. That was the point. It wasn't the having sex part. It was attacking innocence part. Jesus fucking Christ. LOL, raping an angel is wild. Yeah, they were disguised as men. God basically looked at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is God looked at these cities and they were like, damn, these people are evil. And they were like, no. And some angels were like, no, there's some good people in those cities. There's this guy named Lot. He's a good guy. And God was like, I don't know. All right, you think he's such a good guy? You're going down there as angels. You're going down there as humans and you're testing it. That was the story. And the angels were like, bet. And they went down, and just before they were gang raped, Lot came out of his house and was like, no, rape my daughter instead. Here, come in my house. That's the story. And the angels were like, see, God? Lot is a good guy. And God was like, all right, fine. I'm going to destroy these cities, but Lot's family gets to escape. That is Sodom and Gomorrah. His daughters eventually got him drunk and raped him. Yes, yeah, that's the next part of the story. Anyway, so it's Sodom and Gomorrah. The next part is, so God's like, all right, we're destroying that. And the angels are like, all right, you got to leave. You got to take your family. God is about to destroy these cities for sucking so much. And Lot was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And God has like a really funny sense of humor. So don't look back. You're not allowed to look at the city. It's going to be really sick. It's going to be really sick. There's going to be asteroids coming down. There's going to be pillars of fire. It's going to be the sickest explosions you've ever heard, but you're not allowed to look. All right. You got to be cool. You can't look back at the really based cool explosions. And Lot was like, okay, I guess. And then they all ran away very cinematically from the cities, and God is just blasting them. And then Lot's wife is like, wow, that sounds so sick. And she looked back, bam, turned into a pillar of salt. God was like, yoink, you failed the test. Sorry, you don't get to see the based explosions. Psh, zapped her right into a pillar of salt. So Lot's family, they're like wandering around and they're like, oh my God, that was the apocalypse. Like God just killed everyone. We're the only living people left on Earth. They thought it was like God had like killed everybody. But no, God had just killed like 2 cities, right? And they thought, oh, it's the apocalypse, everybody's dead but us. And so they went to a cave for shelter, and Lot's daughters were like, we're the last 2 women and our dad is the last man on Earth. We've got to repopulate the Earth like Adam and Eve. So they're like, all right, well, I don't want to, but we got to repopulate the Earth. We're the only women left. So they got him drunk. They said, okay, we'll give him a bunch of wine and then we'll fuck him, and he won't know what he's doing. This is the Bible. This is an accurate telling of the Bible. How do I know this? Unfortunately, I have read it. How do I know all that? I read the fucking Bible. It's very funny because a lot of people will like hold up the Bible and be like, this is so holy. I love it. God, Bible is so cool. It's so awesome. It's so holy. I'm swearing on it. I swear on the Bible. That's how important this is. And it's like, have you ever looked at it? Like, even for fun? There's some really funny shit in there. I'm not gonna lie. There's some really, it is very important. Like the Bible is crazy. It's got a bunch of really funny things in it, really funny stories. There's like good religious teachings or good like moral teachings, and then there's a bunch of just wild shit and some of the most evil shit you've ever heard in your life. And you're like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? Who thinks this is a Bible? Like this could direct my behavior in the modern 21st century. This shit is insane. These are a bunch of like sheep herders from the Bronze Age saying random ass shit. Like, what the fuck is this? There's a part where Jacob is in Egypt and he's like super horny. Anyway, we're not even gonna get into it. Let's just say it's Vaush's favorite part of the Bible, okay? It's Vaush's favorite part of the Bible. All right, let's keep going.
The show Landman was co-created by Taylor Sheridan, aka the guy who made Yellowstone and its various prequels and spin-offs.
Ezekiel was on one, yeah, exactly. Star Spangled, yeah. He's talking about how everyone has a massive cock. It's super funny.
Don't know about those? Ask your parents. They've seen every episode.
That land isn't mine. You see that fence? That's mine. That fence, mine. This field's mine. That fucking fence down there, that's mine too.
All right, here we go. I'm sorry, chat. I can't tell you about this and then not show you. There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys and whose emission was like that of horses. She lusted after lovers with genitals as large as donkeys and emissions like those of a horse. They have been talking about donkey cocks for 5,000 years, chat. People have been talking about donkey cocks for 5,000 years. Like, oh man, he's got a donkey cock on him. And yet she multiplied her promiscuity, remembering the days of her youth, when she had prostituted herself in the land of Egypt, and lusted after lovers whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emissions were like that of stallions. So you revisited the indecency of your youth, when Egyptians caressed your bosom and pressed your young I mean, this is... Again, horny.
Spinning some bitch.
But we're not here to talk stone. Landman stars Billy Bob as an oil company guy who makes sure that they have land to drill on and that no one messes with their shit. In a scene that has since gone multi-platinum viral online, Billy Bob dunks on a city-slickin' lady lawyer who's been bamboozled by big green tech into believing that renewable energy is somehow good.
They use clean energy to power the oil wells.
They use alternative energy. There's nothing clean about this.
Please, Mr. Oilman, tell me how the wind is bad for the environment.
You have any idea how much diesel they have to burn to mix that much concrete? Or make that steel and haul this shit out here? and put it together with a 450-foot crane, and its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it.
And watching.
Now, chat, how many of you think that sounds plausible? How many of you think that makes sense? Like, oh wow, that must take a lot of energy to build a windmill. It must never make up for what if you just burned fuel. If you just burn the fuel to make that thing, you would get a lot more electricity than setting up a windmill. How many of you think that makes sense? That is dumb as fuck. You are stupid as fuck. You're a dumb motherfucking moron. You're a fucking idiot. That is dumber than fucking like you. What the fuck are you talking about? How stupid are you? You fucking dipshit. Have you had a generator? Have you ever run a generator forever? The fact that people were like, yeah, that makes sense, dude. I think you should lose your right to vote. If it, like this is a test. If you hear that and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, right to vote stripped. Right to vote immediately stripped. On its face, it's dumb as fuck. You don't understand anything about reality. Like your ability to talk about things in reality is so substandard that you should not be allowed to vote. You're too stupid.
That back, you may have caught yourself thinking, oh shit, I actually don't know how much diesel they had to burn to mix that much concrete. I must be a fucking idiot.
Apple pie.
But here's the thing. You don't have to know. Because a bunch of very smart people have already figured it out, and it's called a life cycle assessment. And the whole point is to account for the actual emissions over the lifetime of a wind turbine or solar panel when you factor in all the installation and maintenance, and they look like this. And if we look real close at this one, not only does a wind turbine offset the carbon footprint of making and installing and eventually disposing of it, but it will offset that carbon footprint in an average of 5.3 months. And study after study comes to a similar conclusion. It takes
that includes all the maintenance that's done. That means construction of it. That means building of it, because it's producing metric shit tons of energy by spinning a gigantic turbine. In order to generate electricity by burning oil, you have to burn oil to boil water to cause steam to rise to spin a turbine with steam pressure. Do you understand how incredibly inefficient that is? Do you understand anything about reality at all? Like, to think that windmills don't make up the energy required to build them is so mind-bogglingly fucking stupid. You must know nothing about anything. But this is most people. Most people have absolutely no idea how anything works.
A few months to a couple of years to offset the lifetime carbon footprint, depending on a lot of factors, including the ones that he's so concerned about in the Landman speech. Wind turbines spend the vast majority of their lives producing fully carbon-free energy. So that 20 years thing seems kinda super wrong. But don't worry, there's more.
We have a 120-year petroleum-based infrastructure. Our whole lives depend on it. And hell, it's in everything. That road we came in on, the wheels on every car ever made, including yours, it's in tennis rackets and lipstick and refrigerators and antihistamines, pretty much anything plastic. Your cell phone case, artificial heart valves, soap, hand lotion, garbage bags, fishing boats, you name it. Every thing.
Now, a lot of that is just true. Oil and gas are in every fucking thing. We started out lighting it on fire for energy, but over the past century, we figured out how to weave it into every part of our lives, and especially anything involving plastic, which is almost entirely made from oil and gas. And this is a really common argument for why you should shut up and let oil companies do whatever they want. I mean, your socks are made of plastic, and we do use a ton of oil, and we are running out of it. But let's just think about that argument for one extra second. If oil and gas are such incredible tools for manufacturing, and it'll be really hard to find their replacement, then shouldn't we conserve those things? Shouldn't we stop trying to cram oil and gas into socks and water bottles and build millions of solar panels and wind turbines so we can stretch our finite and dwindling fossil fuel resources as far as they can go? But instead of doing that, America is now extracting more oil and gas than any other country on Earth ever. Forget Saudi Arabia, forget Russia. America is right now the first team all-conference #1 Friday Night Lights touchdown, full eyes, clear heart, can't lose of oil and gas.
Boys, my heart is full. My heart's full.
And not to get too into the weeds here, but oil in the US, and specifically Texas, is getting harder to extract every year. Landman is set in what's known as the Permian Basin. We've been drilling for oil there for 100 years, and for the first 80 years, it was just sitting in big, accessible pools right below the surface, waiting to blast out the moment a Beverly Hillbilly tripped over it. But that stuff is basically all gone, and for the past couple of decades, the main way to get that good old French Kevin is by fracking, aka blasting the shit out of the shale rock, pumping it full of sludge, and sucking up tiny droplets of trapped oil and gas. Not only is fracking more labor-intensive and costly, but it also requires exponentially more drilling and infrastructure since fracking wells deplete much faster. And on top of that, we've already fracked the juiciest, oiliest parts of the Permian, so we're getting less bang for our buck as the years go on. But instead of conserving our fossil fuels, or God forbid regulating them, we are sucking them out of the ground and putting them into every thing we can think of, because the free market is always right. Technically, in this case, the free market was subsidized by the federal government, which essentially meant they gave taxpayer money to private companies to develop fracking technology, but who's counting?
Suddenly America's like the biggest oil producer and the biggest that was me, people. I just want you to
And what the hell, we're already here. Let's do one more.
If the whole world decided to go electric tomorrow, we don't have the transmission lines to get the electricity to the cities. It'd take 30 years if we started tomorrow.
We definitely do need...
Wouldn't. We're gonna do it in 10 years.
Need major electric grid updates in the US and the world. In the US in particular, we have an insanely piecemeal patchwork of transmission lines built by thousands of independent utilities who are mostly focused on local service without really thinking about how the whole country fits together. But if Billy Bob is worried about new construction, he is in the wrong business, because oil and gas requires an incredible amount of infrastructure. I guess Billy Bob's character just draws the line at infrastructure that doesn't involve oil and gas? Whatever the case, it's inconsistent. And also, we don't need to start working on this tomorrow. We're already working on it. The world already spends around $500 billion per year on electric grid and storage, and there are lots of viable options for upgrading the grid and transitioning to clean energy in the next 10 to 15 years. A task, I will add, that would be much easier if fossil fuel companies would stop actively blocking progress on renewable energy and grid updates.
If America just built massive solar fields and wind farms, and we built high speed or ultra high voltage DC lines across the country, we could basically solve our energy problems. But we just won't do it.
But you don't have to take my word for it. Take it away.
Doesn't the US some of the best wind farm? Yes. Oklahoma, the Dakotas. We have some of the most. We have some of the best sunlight resources in Southern California and Southern Nevada. That's not how DC works. You've never heard of ultra high voltage DC lines, huh? They have as little as 1.5% loss over 1,000 kilometers. You know how we know this? This is your first time chat, is because we just talked about it the last stream I did. Welcome in. Welcome on in to the Central Committee stream. What you think is impossible has already been done. How do you feel about that? Well, you just told me that's not how DC work. What you think is impossible has already been done. Was it yesterday or was it the day before, chat? I try to remember like what time we talked about the DC lines.
The game in town and the terms of
was
the
it Monday?
Are reasonable.
Just limited to China's neighbors. Since 2013, China has been making economic and literal inroads to much of the world.
Renewable energy
products too.
Deemed data inefficient.
Renewable.
Is about
Angjiaba.
And if
aspirations of the Chinese people. Oh, by the way, chat, we want to do
for farming shrimp
and solar.
Yeah, I'm excited to share something very close to my heart.
I'm looking for a very specific thing I wanted to show the chatter. America's toast. Like America's toast. Rail, that's true of solar panels, that's true of windmills. So there's 40,000 kilometers of ultra high voltage DC line in China. I think she had a map at some point. Maybe not. So the thing that you said we can't do is already done.
Camera footage of ExxonMobil lobbyist Keith McCoy.
Did we aggressively fight against...
If somebody can find it, they can link it to me.
Some of the science
Yes. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that. You know, we were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders.
Huh. And speaking of Exxon, there was one last little throwaway line that we should take a look at.
Who owns them?
Oil companies. We use them to power the wells. And believe me, if Exxon thought them things right there were the future, they'd be putting them all over the goddamn place.
Okay, what the is this argument? If wind turbines worked, where are all the wind turbines? You're surrounded by wind turbines. That's why you're talking about them. There's 15,000 wind turbines in Texas. Lawyer lady saw a bunch of wind turbines and asked you about them, and you said, oh yeah, the oil companies own them. What are you talking about? Okay, number one, a ton of oil companies are putting them up all over the goddamn place, like BP and Shell and Total. I think they only name-checked Exxon because they're the most recognizable oil company that isn't diving in on renewables. And number two, Exxon's an oil company. That's what they're good at. I mean, they've tried other stuff to see if they can expand their horizons. Profits. But their bread and butter is oil. And now I'm hungry. Fuck it, think about it this way. Spaghetti is a fantastic food item, but no matter how many times I try to order it from McDonald's, they refuse to serve it to me. They make burgers and fries. They'll try a salad, and for about a month in 2023, they murdered about 30% of Gen Z with Grimace's purple poison, but the absence of a McSpaghetti on their menu does not mean spaghetti isn't a viable food. They just love burgers, like Exxon loves oil.
I love gold.
Okay, but that clip would be perfect.
Here I go. China's ultra high voltage DC network. They already do the things that we people will come into my chat and say, that's impossible. And it's already built and operating in China. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, people will come into my chat and say, that's not how it works. That's impossible. And it's already built and operating in China. They also built and operated it in Brazil and India. Sorry, America's so far behind.
Perfect if you said oil. I love oil! Perfect. Whatever. The part of this that really gets my apples is that none of these arguments are new. The whole monologue.
See, the reason they could do that is because in China, you can override the will of the local people and build infrastructure against their will. In America, we have something called freedom. And we don't just build infrastructure. We don't just build infrastructure and then like attack people. And we don't override local people. Like, we don't build stuff like...
Tensions flare at the Dakota Access Pipeline protest as police use water cannons and tear gas against the demonstrators. Confrontations erupted last night after hundreds of protesters removed a burnt-out truck from the backwater bridge and then tried to cross the highway. At least one person was arrested and dozens of demonstrators reportedly injured. The 1,900-kilometer four-state pipeline is being built to carry oil from western North Dakota to a shipping point in Illinois. But the Standing Rock Sioux, whose reservation is near the pipeline route, fear a leak could contaminate their drinking water and construction could threaten sacred sites.
Oh, I guess never mind. We just use
like
state power to build pipelines for oil and gas. We don't use. So what? That's what happens when you try to protest oil. You get assaulted by the cops, right? You try to say, hey, we should build, instead of oil, we should build power transmission lines. You know what happens when a power transmission line breaks? Nothing. There isn't a gigantic oil leak that contaminates the fucking reservoir. It just breaks. It goes, maybe sometimes you'll have a fire or something. You know, you shut it down. Then you come back out and you fix the wires.
That's what I call Climate Denial's greatest hits album. These exact anti-renewable, pro-oil talking points have been tested and repeated for years, and the ones that performed the best with the general public got repeated again. This whole "you owe modern society to oil and gas" argument pops up in advertisements, nature documentaries, the Epcot Center, Facebook memes, even children's books. I literally have a children's book written by an oil and gas lobby group and distributed to public schools that uses the same oil and gas are in everything angle. And it's not a secret who's been pushing this narrative. For decades, fossil fuel companies and their many industry lobby groups have spent millions upon millions of dollars on disinformation campaigns and PR stunts and advertisements, even influencer marketing campaigns. There's a gaggle of articles you can read about this, but in my opinion, you should start with the Drilled podcast from Amy Westervelt. There's a link in the bio, but here's a little taste to wet your whistle.
Exxon as a company was putting ads in the newspaper that were contrary to the research that they were paying us to be doing.
So this is an experiment in shifting public opinion away from urgency.
The TLDR is that oil and gas companies decided that the best defense is a good offense. And they've spent years chumming the waters with disinformation to convince the public of everything from natural gas is clean to wind turbines are a bunch of dirty, gas-guzzling bird assassins.
They're noisy. They kill the birds. You want to see a bird graveyard? You just go. Take a look. A bird graveyard? Go under a windmill someday. You'll see more birds than you've ever seen ever in your life.
And it's finally time to get to the bottom of how this clip got into an episode of Landman that otherwise had nothing to do with wind turbines. Because folks, I think I figured it out. And I will tell you. Because I like you and I want you to have a satisfying ending to this video. First things first, it wasn't an oil industry executive who secretly and carefully wrote this out and then slipped it into a script so that Billy Bob would pop off about renewable energy. So maybe it was Billy Bob himself. I mean, after all, his performance was a little too perfect. And he is from Hot Springs, Arkansas, a mere 2-hour drive from the location of Arkansas's first major oil discovery, a little town called Stevens, Arkansas, population 770. So maybe Billy Bob just had an axe to grind for years, and he wrote that monologue himself to settle a score. I mean, after all, he did write, direct, and star in an inexplicably fantastic movie, Sling Blade, where he played an intellectually challenged man, and somehow it still holds up 30 years later. So we decided to watch some press interviews of Billy Bob for the show Landman to see what there was to see.
And by the way, this, as you can see, this is not like a preaching thing about oil is awesome. It's the ins and outs, ups and downs, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the oil business. It's not politicized or anything like that.
And that's basically how every interview went. He's not trying to forward a personal agenda other than trying to pull off wool hat.
Except he's dumb as fuck. If somebody tried to put those talking points about wind turbines in my mouth, the first thing I would have done is called up my friends and be like, is this true? Like, am I about to go out there and spout a bunch of bullshit? I mean, you memorized it, right? Like, you said it, it came out of your fucking mouth. And I would have been like, listen, I understand that this guy is supposed to be an asshole, and maybe this is what an asshole would say. But I think the audience might believe the lies, and I'm concerned about spreading these politicized lies. You know, we need to do something about that. Maybe we should change the speech to get rid of this. Does this really advance the character? Let's not have us just spread lies like this.
Hat under fedora, but make it pirate. And if that's his personal agenda, sign me up. No, obviously I'm just kidding. He looks insane. But then we found out that Landman was actually based on a podcast called Boomtown. And Christian Wallace, the creator and host, was not only on set for a lot of the Landman filming, he's an executive producer and co-creator on the show. Aha! We found the source. But then we listened to all 11 episodes of Boomtown. And it was really good. Christian worked in the Permian as an oil roughneck himself, and he'd been a writer for Texas Monthly for a few years before launching the podcast. And like a lot of his previous work, Boomtown focuses on the less well-covered human stories woven into the oil industry. The often brutal reality of an industry that might pay well when times are good, and then...
Yeah. Did you see that guy accidentally hit that moose with his car? No. Holy shit, Jamie, pull that video up.
That's right. I listened to an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, specifically episode 2 2083, a full 3.5-hour long interview with Landman's other co-creator and only credited writer, Taylor Sheridan. And guess what I heard?
That would make sense to me why the government would keep that information from people. Because if we found out that people were essentially just a vessel of souls and that we are essentially designed to give birth to artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. Like, a lot. At one point, Joe Rogan is pretty sure that Tucker Carlson has evidence for the existence of aliens, except they're not aliens, they're angels and demons who are farming human souls because these angel aliens eat AI. And I'm not fucking joking, that's really what's in this episode. My God, how is this one of America's most popular podcasts? But about 49 minutes into this episode, we gain some really interesting insight into the Landman script.
Nothing makes me crack up more than the Stop Oil people when they're blocking the highway with clothes made with oil. Like they have rubber.
This is one of my
It's fucking insane.
I'm making a TV show about this right now. Yeah, called Landman with Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh wow!
About the oil industry and about energy.
Interesting. Well, let's not jump to any conclusions here. I mean, he was nominated for an Oscar for writing Hell or High Water. Maybe let's give...
You know, there's this debate about climate change, which, by the way, climate's always changing. It was changing before we showed up. We're more likely to run out of oil before we find its pure replacement. I mean, look, let's look at all the shit on your table made out of...
Okay, so right off the bat, this guy's an oil propagandist, and he doesn't even know the facts. We are never going to run out of fossil fuels on this planet. There is so much fossil fuel in this planet. We will never, ever, never, ever, ever, never, ever, never, 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 never run out. If we burn what we already know we can access economically, we will cook the planet and kill ourselves. The constraint on our oil and fossil fuels is not oil and fossil fuels. It is the atmosphere's ability to absorb more carbon while being habitable. We are not going to run out ever. For example, in Pennsylvania, we are currently drilling into the Marcellus Shale. The Marcellus Shale is a really, really large, deep shale full of oil and gas. Beneath the Marcellus Shale is an even larger, significantly larger shale called the Utica Shale. In fact, the Utica Shale also it's deep. It has even more. Okay, there is something called methane clathrates that are all on the bottom of the ocean. There's literally frozen methane, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of cubic feet of frozen methane called methane clathrates just on the bottom of the ocean. There's like 200 to 400 years of coal in the United States. There is no chance, zero, none. Fossil fuels, that's not talking about oil sands, that's not talking about the stuff in Venezuela. There is so much shit beyond compare. That's not talking about stuff that's underneath the Arctic or Antarctic caps. We're not running out. Never. The only thing that's going to stop us is if we stop ourselves, because fossil fuel burning is damaging the atmosphere and creating climate catastrophe. Like, this is stupid. This is stupid shit for dummies. Why do I know about the Utica Shale? Why do I know about it? Because I worked in Pennsylvania. And I ran for office on trying to tax this shit. I wanted to significantly raise taxes on oil companies. I wanted to do what was called a severance tax and make it so that if you drill anything in Pennsylvania, you have to pay a significant amount of money to Pennsylvania so that we could have, if we had wells that exist, they're going to pay for a lot of services in Pennsylvania. That was one of the things I was campaigning on. I lost. Let me see if I can find a map. This is the Utica Shale. Look how large this is. That means if you drill down far enough in any of these locations, you will run into the Utica Shale. I'm going to show you the Marcellus Shale, which is what the current fracking is in the Northeast. This is the Marcellus play, as they call it. The Marcellus Fairway. We're never, ever, never, ever running out of this shit. I hate when people say we're running out, because it gives us the reason why I hate so much when people say we're going to run out of this shit is because it means that we could just sit back and it'll solve itself. It will not. It will not. We're not going to just stop burning this shit.
of oil. The headphones, the soles of my shoes.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, the socks I'm wearing, everything.
And there it is right there. It's the Billy Bob monologue, but worse. It seems like Taylor Sheridan has heard oil lobby talking points, remembered them, and then wrote his own version for Landman. But as we listen to these guys talk for another 2 hours, we get to something even more telling.
But people don't understand. You know, they're mandating all these electric vehicles in California. 75% of California's electricity comes from fossil fuels. About 15% comes from wind and alternative energy. And then they still get a little from nuclear.
This one is wild to me. He's not even close on those numbers. He's doing a Good Will Hunting style monologue, but he doesn't know any of the actual stats. I mean, he's a good writer, and his instincts tell him he needs to say some numbers there, so he just kind of makes them up. And he's way off. According to the actual numbers from the California Energy Commission, renewable and no carbon energy in 2023 clocked in at 58%, with fossil fuels coming in at 42%, which is right around half of what Taylor Sheridan said. Weirdly, he gave wind power too much credit in California and then forgot about solar generation. And I mean, if I had to speculate, I might guess that because Taylor lives in Texas, where they do get a big chunk of their electricity from wind, he assumed maybe it'd be similar in California, so he riffed some numbers that would support the thing he wanted to say, which again, was wrong, but it sounded pretty good. I actually have a podcast called The Climate Denier's Playbook, where I look at old climate denial talking points with my co-host Nicole Conlon, and Joe Rogan and Taylor Sheridan hit like 75% of the talking points.
Every one of their predictions has always been wrong. I mean, if you go back to Al Gore's
Kilimanjaro
Inconvenient Truth,
supposed to no snow by 2006 or something.
All bullshit. All wrong.
Let's just say we took a corner of Utah and we just solar paneled that f***er. Guess what we can't do? Get it anywhere. We talk about things that warm the planet.
Yeah, that did a lot of warming for sure.
I've never heard it. No one's mentioned the 1,000 nuclear bombs we set off.
And for the record, I don't think these two dudes are taking bribes from the oil industry. I just think that they are repeating stuff that they've heard without actually checking to see if it's true. They're basically sharing a Facebook meme, except they have massive audiences, a dozen television shows, and access to Billy Bob Thornton. And they're doing it in a deeply unself-aware way.
Because I can't stand to pay money and have somebody preach to me their ideas.
We're in a weird time where everybody has a say, and I don't think everybody should be able to talk. It's like, I mean, everybody should be able to talk, but through social media, that gets just broadcast en masse to the world. And you get these groups of people that they huddle up in these fucking echo chambers and they duke it out.
I just read something in the last day or two that, and I'm going to get it wrong, but 1937 is closer to 1984 than 2023 is to 84.
He did get it wrong, but not because he's being paid off by big number, because it's a thing he heard one time and it sounded right to him, so he repeated it. And I get it. We all want to be Good Will Hunting, but if you're trying so hard to own the libs that you're making shit up to reinforce some propaganda you heard, you're not Good Will Hunting. You're the ponytail guy. And while I can't say for sure where Sheridan heard all this stuff the first time, it seems exceedingly likely that we can eventually trace it all back to the fossil fuel companies who've been spending millions of dollars to spread these messages as far and wide as...
Joe just said they get in these echo chambers and duke it out. That's the opposite of an echo chamber. What's up?
They could. And frankly, it was a great plan. Oil executives in the 80s didn't have to kidnap a young Taylor Sheridan and force feed him lies about wind turbines so he would grow up to write a snappy monologue to poison the well against renewable energy. They just made a big vision board so they could capture as many minds as they possibly could, and one of the minds happened to be this guy. So what are we gonna do about it? Well, the first step is to get more informed about climate disinformation. Incredible journalists have built careers investigating and breaking stories and writing about disinformation, and you should read their work and follow them on social media and support them whenever possible. We put a list of some of our favorites in the description. Seriously check them out. The sad fact, is that there's a lot of bullshit out there, and it's not obvious that whatever you're reading or listening to or watching is accurate. It isn't obvious how long a wind turbine takes to work off its carbon debt, or what California's electrical grid mix is. If I hadn't just done a video about natural gas, I might never have realized that Sheridan's very confident rant was actually a sort of fossil fuel fan fiction. I mean, look at this chart. Looks legit, it's all bullshit. I just made up a bunch of numbers, it's that easy. And judging by recent events, the level of bullshit is going to increase. In the proud tradition of a billionaire with a social media network, Mark Zuckerberg released a video about how Facebook will be rolling back fact-checking. So arming yourself with a better understanding of how to spot propaganda is a really good idea. Uh-oh, did I just spend a bunch of time pushing a narrative that learning about climate disinformation was good and then come to a self-serving conclusion? You bet your apples I did. I learned it from the best. Whoa, location change. That's right, I'm in sunny San Francisco for something completely unrelated to this episode, but I figured this would be a good place to tell you about Climate Town hats.
When I first saw that video, I immediately debunked it. I think I was one of the first people to debunk it when it went viral on Twitter. It's just crazy. All right, everybody. I think the rest of this is a merch ad. So if you would like to complete your ethical reacts, go ahead. But that's going to be the end of it for me today. I am going to send y'all over to... Who should we go over to?
You're thinking of...
Who should we go to? You know what I feel like, chat? Today, I was yelling a lot. And that means I think I need some mental health care. I need some like meditation. I need some like relaxation. I need some centering. I need some self-reflection. So that means we're going over to my buddy, my pal, my friendo, Joshua, over at the Brain Domain. So we're going to send y'all over there. Say hi to Joshua for me. Be nice. DSA raid in the chat. Also, be nice to my friends and family. If you're mean to them, I will hate you. Be smarter than that. Even if what they do is something that you're not a fan of, first of all, you're wrong. I only like cool people. Is there any hope for us? What? All this stuff is easy to fix. All this stuff is easy to fix. Since 2008, China has built 40,000 kilometers of ultra high-speed rail. We can fix this. We just have to want to do it. All right, everybody. Stay safe. Solidarity forever. And free Palestine.